That's right. I think I'm on. I don't get on there, but I've been realizing this.
Like Rumble too, because you can have it on your TV at home as an app. You can put it up right there and watch.
I recognize many faces from folks across our foothill and mountain and valley community, as well as people who've come from out of state and up and down the state, so thank you. This is a really important topic that we're talking about tonight, so I appreciate you sharing your time and look forward to your questions when we get to the Q&A. But we will be starting off hearing from a very large panel of experts. We actually have so many folks who are super passionate about this and come from such a wide variety of backgrounds in regards to the uses of how we live, work, and recreate in Sierra National Forest, and what the impacts are in relationship to this proposed monument, not only today and in the range of light region. I'm not going to call it the range of light because it's not designated, but not only right here and today, but also around the state and the threats that we're facing in regards to ensuring that we don't have this monument proposed now, nor that we have to face this battle again in the future. So I again look forward to your questions and hearing from each of our experts. So to begin, okay, forgive a little bit of technical snafus as we're getting things set. These are the organizations that are with us here tonight. You'll get to hear introductions from everybody as we're going through and speaking with each member of our panel. We actually have some bonus people here as well, and so I'll take a moment to introduce them as we get to those segments in our discussion tonight. Okay, but just to start off with introductions, this is a little embarrassing. I guess I'm introducing myself. Again, I'm Roseanne, a natural resources consultant for California Four-Wheel Drive Association. I've been involved with this group for going on 3 years, and I've been involved in opposing the Ranger Light Monument for over 10 years since this first came about, long before I knew about Cal Four-Wheel, and there were citizen groups that were opposing it when it first came out as a proposition. And so I'm really pleased to get to join this fight now from the perspective of Cal 4. We represent just about 4,000 members up and down the state, and Cal 4 is kind of uniquely positioned, like actually many other positions here, in that we advocate for stewardship and active conservation in balance with human uses like motorized recreation and all outdoor recreation on our public lands. And so Cal 4 has been at the forefront of this since they started in 1959. It's actually Cal 4 that was able to petition Congress to have the Ducey Urshan Trail designated as a motor. I'm joined here by many others. And, trail, and our volunteer groups are actually working to mitigate routes where there might be concerns with endangered species or habitat destruction, anything like that. Our agency manages the land in which we're recreating. We work with them to ensure that it's done in a highly responsible way. So a little bit about the Range of Light. For those of you who might be new to this topic, it is a proposed monument that would cover over 1.4 million acres in the Central Sierra. And I have a map up here so you can see some orientation to the boundaries. It would essentially swallow all of Sierra National Forest in whole. Sierra National Forest is 1.3 million acres. And so it would contain that along with some additional lands in the San Joaquin River Gorge up towards that left arm, and then some kind of exterior border lands that would comprise the whole 1.4 million acres. And as I mentioned, this has actually been around as a battle for over 10 years, and we'll tell a little bit more about the group Unite the Parks that's behind this monument, but it would run from the border of Yosemite National Park all the way down to the border of Sequoia Keys Canyon National Park, and hence the name Unite the Parks by the group that is advocating for this. And the main reason that they share that this monument is needed is that they want to build connectivity between Yosemite and Sequoia for biodiversity, for conservation of species and habitat. But an important thing that isn't always made clear in the information that's coming out from United Parks is that we actually have that connectivity already achieved. If you look at the green shaded land on the east side of the proposed boundary, that's already existing wilderness. We have actually over 500,000 acres of existing wilderness connecting those two areas. And another fun fact is that this band of wilderness that you're seeing from Emigrant and Hoover on the north down to Golden Trout on the south, which might be a little out of view for the folks in our audience, it's the largest continuous section of wilderness in the entire lower 48. So we have really good biodiversity and habitat connectivity in our Central Sierra already. The rest of the monument border that is shown in white is really what's of very high concern to everybody in this room today. That's where we have a variety of towns, many multiple uses, and issues related to their civic and private use in addition to other public uses. So we'll dig into all that some more. I don't want to go into too much detail, but that will kind of give you some orientation to what we're looking at with the range of light. To give just a little bit more orientation, here's a closer map, or more zoomed in map, that shows a few of the communities. So you can see on the north, Wawona is right there at the border of Yosemite. It's not in the proposed monument, it's right on the edge. But then when you come down, you can see that Bass Lake, North Fork, much of Auberry, all of Big Creek, Shaver Lake, Huntington, Dinky Creek, Balch Camp, and Pine Flat are some of the main communities that are contained within this range of light. So if you live or work in any of those communities, then that's an important thing to keep in mind as we're continuing our discussion tonight. Another big piece that will emerge as we're talking is that the vision for this proposed monument would shift management of this area of land from the Forest Service to the National Park Service. I'm not going to read through this whole slide because there's quite a bit of content, but this is really just kind of a snapshot. I encourage you to read it as I'm talking about some of the ways that that impact would unfold. And one of the main areas is that where the Forest Service manages for what we call the multiple use objective, where they are intentionally crafting their management plans to ensure balance between all of the different uses that we have, as well as interest from the public for recreation, for business, commercial, and private considerations, with biodiversity, wildlife, and native species. They're balancing all of that in their land, trail, and site-specific management planning. And with the Park Service, their objective is primarily conservation. And so they'll place that as the top priority, and then any of those other uses become secondary or non-essential in the grand scheme of how they're doing their management planning. And you can see just in the comparison between like Yosemite National Park and Sierra National Forest, what some of those differences are in regard to what you can do. You can't ride motorized vehicles off-road. You can't do a lot of things that would be free and open in Sierra National Forest in a national park setting. And so that's just kind of an umbrella view of what some of the main differences are. But you can see there's many more details there. And again, we'll get into that more with our speakers tonight. Okay, so just a quick overview of what's at stake. Here's some of the big bullet points. It would change the priority for multiple uses to a priority for conservation. It would alter how we are able to interact with the agency in providing public input in land management planning. We'll get more into that as well. It will decrease economic uses, including logging, biofuel, cattle grazing, mining, and other uses. It will also charge the public fees for entry. Right now, we can just drive open the forest for free anytime we want to go. We would have entry fees to get into a monument. And the bottom line is that this really is more than just kind of a beautiful thought of a monument designation. It is a federal land grab. And that's a piece that we'll emphasize heavily tonight as the bigger picture in how we not only will successfully oppose this today, but how we'll successfully ensure that we don't have to face this battle again in the future, comes down to this issue of stopping federal land grabs. So I also wanted to note that if you're curious about anything that's coming out from Unite the Parks, you can look on their website. They have some information there, and I would encourage everybody after this meeting, if you haven't already, spend some time on their website. Cross-compare notes from what we talked about with what they have to say. And if you have questions, or if you see things that don't line up, that's a great conversation point where we can talk further. I think that when we get into issues like this, we don't want to dive into pointing fingers or getting steeped up with blame. Let's just look at the facts. And when you go through the facts that are provided from the United Parks, and then you go through the facts in regard to what we're concerned about here, the picture becomes pretty clear. But you, of course, can make your own decision. And those are great conversations for follow-up if there are any. I already named some of those known impacts, so for the sake of time, since we have a lot to get through tonight in a couple of hours, I want to move on and first introduce Ben Burr. He is the Executive Director of Blue Ribbon Coalition. And Ben, if you want to stand up real quick. We have such a full panel. I'm going to jump right in and let you share a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Perfect. So my name is Ben Burr. I'm the Executive Director of the Blue Ribbon Coalition, and we are a national group that works to protect our public lands and keep them open for outdoor recreation. And a lot of times that means we focus on motorized recreation because that is often the biggest target of what these groups are trying to restrict. As far as this issue is concerned, we are also the group that probably has the furthest advanced lawsuit challenging the Abuse of the Antiquities Act right now. So we were in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in September of this year, arguing against the expansion of the Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument on the premise that a president doesn't have unlimited power to just designate every square inch of federal land as a national monument, which is what the government was actually arguing in court that they do have. And so we care a lot about these national monument designations. We've been monitoring all of these. We've been monitoring all the proposals, and we're just grateful to see such a strong showing here tonight of folks who I hope are opposed to this, because this is going to be a very valuable community. That's who we are, right?
Do you want to elaborate a little bit more about current activity?
Yeah, and so just over the weekend I got a news alert that they were doing a public meeting up in the Satsitla National Monument. There's actually 4 in California that are being proposed right now. And the news published this at 8:11 a.m. on Saturday morning to let you all know that there would be a meeting at 10 a.m. that morning at the Forest Service to come have a public hearing about a public listening session about this proposed monument, which is exactly what happened in Arizona when Biden designated that one in northern Arizona about a year ago. And so I think there's going to be some things designated. We need to be watching all of these. We are tracking 9 proposed monuments right now at Blue Ribbon Coalition that total 5 million acres in total. That's as big as New Jersey. That's bigger than Hawaii. That's bigger than Massachusetts. I mean, this would lock up a lot of land during what we consider to be a lame duck moment of the Biden presidency. It would really sabotage the incoming Trump administration's ability to uphold a lot of their campaign promises. And so we hope they would take aggressive action to undo any of these, but they won't if there isn't a broad showing of public opposition to these. I was working for Senator Lee's office from 2011 to 2017. When I moved back to DC, the first meeting he had was with Ken Salazar, who was the Secretary of Interior, back in 2011, to ask him not to designate any more monuments in Utah. That was in 2011, and by 2016 we had Bears Ear designated. So Mike Lee is now the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. This is an issue we've been trying to build this level of public opposition to since 2011. And in Utah, you'd probably even say since the 90s when they designated Grand Staircase. And so we need to use this moment to build a broad case against why these monuments are a problem. We've now seen the monument plans come out for all these monuments in Utah. We saw in Grand Staircase, they closed 1.2 million acres of that to motorized access, not just recreation, but motorized access. To put that in perspective, the hurricanes that came through North Carolina washed out all the roads in the Pisgah National Forest, and that was a federal catastrophe. It was an emergency response from FEMA. Every road was washed out. People couldn't get to their homes. They couldn't manage their businesses. They couldn't access their communities. Justifiably, that was a national emergency. In Utah, you can close 1.2 million acres of our roads, and it's a celebratory moment of environmental protection, which it's not. And so we're gearing up to challenge all of these. We'll talk about some of the petitions and things we have going, but we just want everybody to be opposed to these and make sure there's a strong public record of opposition to these. And one thing I want to add, and then I'll turn it back over to Rose. In our case that we're in the 10th Circuit with right now, it is Blue Ribbon Coalition. It is also a grazing family named the Daltons. It's a mining claim owning family named the Kimmerers. There is a Native American private property inholders within the monument. We had a whole coalition of people that we brought into that lawsuit. And there's two things really at play in that lawsuit. One is, can the public just challenge a presidential action like that, or is the president immune from this? Does he have presidential immunity? In order to even make that case, we have to prove injury. So if this monument range of light gets designated, we need folks who have interests in that area, who have economic interests, who have businesses whose communities could be hurt, and we want a broad range of them because if we need to litigate that monument, then we want to do it with everybody that's opposed to it, not just our own organization. And the other thing we're asking is the Antiquities Act. I mean, the judge asked the government lawyer 4 times, can the president designate every square inch of federal land in Utah to be a monument? And the lawyer wouldn't say no from the government. He asked 4 times, like, that's not an answer. Can he do it? And it's like, well, if they do it right, which means if they paper up that they've identified some objects of historic or scientific value, then yeah, they can do whatever they want. And we know that Chief Justice Roberts has said that this can't be a power that is just unlimited. And we know the Supreme Court has an appetite to see a strong challenge to the Antiquities Act. And the Utah case is the furthest along, but we look at every monument that gets designated to see if there's a good litigation path for it.
Yeah, it's really, it's monumental what Blue Ribbon is doing as far as taking on some of these battles through litigation. And again, like you mentioned, we are going to talk a little bit about the variation between litigation and legislation and how we can fight this long term. As we're looking at those 4 proposed monuments that are in California, we have the Range of Light, of course. We have Feather River Canyons, which is actually an older campaign, kind of like Range of Light, that hasn't gained much momentum. And then we have Satitla, which he has mentioned that I actually can't find a map for. It's so new, it's just been rushed through. And one of the issues we have with these Antiquities Act designations is that it can happen with the stroke of a pen. And one president who's willing to go ahead and sign a proclamation to designate a national monument can choose to do so of their own accord without taking in any public input or considering the impact that it has on people who live, work, and recreate in that particular area. We also have the Chuckwalla and Quashan National Monuments in Southern California. And Ben, can you share a little bit about the context of each of these monuments, their location and size and scope of impact?
Yeah, so Chuckwalla, I'd have to look at our website on the size, but it's a few 100,000 acres. It's just south of Joshua Tree National Park. It's really basically trying to expand the boundary of Joshua Tree National Park. And if you go look at that on a map of ownership, half of it's like the checkerboarded inholdings of private property, which is going to be just a nightmare for the agency to manage that. Which usually means the federal government's going to come in and try to dispossess all of the owners of that private land. And so that includes an area that I believe, like the Mecca Hills Wilderness has some like jeep trails called Mecca Kobe, and that's where I've heard about this from some of our Bradley Wells, I believe there's a trail. And so that's where our off-road community is engaged in that one. And then it borders right up next to a military training range, right? Which raises big questions about national security. So we saw with the Biden administration that they wanted to create what were called conservation leases on our public lands, and there was no guarantee that those conservation leases wouldn't get sold to foreign-owned entities or foreign-influenced entities. And so to have a monument like this coming right up against military installations is hugely concerning, and nobody seems to be raising that concern. And then Quetzon, or that monument's down by the Glamis sand dunes. It doesn't actually include the Glamis sand dunes. It's about 400,000 acres, but one thing I want to point out there is one other monument we've heard getting some rumblings about, it's kind of undercover, is the lands between national monument, which is in between Bears Ears and Kings of the Ancient. We thought with 1.3 million acres in Bears Ears that maybe they're done. But no, they're not. They are filling in the lands between. They're literally calling it the lands between. If you think they're done just because they didn't include Glamis, that's not how this works. You see, the range of light is connecting the parts. Like they are trying to fill in all the gaps on the map that are not currently designated somewhere. And so don't take any comfort in the fact that they might have left out an area that's popular. That's coming next. And the other one about this is it goes clear down to the border of Mexico. And you, as Rose pointed out in this earlier slide, once you designate something a monument, the conservation becomes the priority on that land. Protecting the monument objects becomes the priority, not securing the border. That will become secondary to that. And we've seen that happen in the monuments in Arizona. Seems kind of reckless to be putting a monument like this right up onto the southern border like they're doing with that one.
It seems reckless, but I think it's definitely not unintentional. Another few facts, and thank you guys, those are some really good pieces of information about these two monuments. But these two actually border one another. If you look at the line of the southern border of the Chuckwalla monument, and then the line of the northern border of Quezon, they match because they actually are adjacent to one another. And so together they form about 1.1 million acres, and that would, when flowing into Joshua Tree, create a massive band, kind of like we saw with that big band of wilderness in Central California, of very highly conserved lands. And I just want to make it clear, conservation itself is not bad. We believe in conservation. We just believe in conservation in balance with other needs and uses that we have all historically, been engaged in on these areas for many, many generations. And so the security impacts, the resource impacts, the geopolitical impacts are all important. Another fact that you want to consider when you're looking at these very large-scale landscape monument designations is that the resources are often quite critical. And some interesting dynamics between these two particularly is that the Chocolate Mountains run through the Quezon Monument and then kind of through and along the west side of the Chuckwalla Monument. The largest gold deposit in the United States is located in the Chocolate Mountains. And so I think it's no accident that we have a military shooting range sitting over them, and then an attempt to designate as a monument the lands around and over them. Also, the eastern edge of the Salton Sea and below is one of the largest lithium deposits in the United States, and there's actually currently in the works a project to mine all that lithium, which is like a $1.85 billion project that will probably come to fruition with or without this monument designation. But the placement of monuments around resources like that is definitely not accidental, and it is part of the federal land grab. So we have some information on how you can get involved in not only opposing the range of light tonight, but when we get to the end, we'll share with you how you can also oppose these through some of the work that the Urban Coalition is doing. So quick segue in just a little more context on how monuments are designated. There's only two routes. One is through Congress, and that's really the appropriate route that a monument should go through. The Antiquities Act, which permits designation of monuments, identifies that a very specific and discrete object of value, you'll hear us using that term, object of value, has to be named as the monument site. And then the smallest area of land surrounding that monument is what is considered appropriate to designate for the safekeeping of that monument. So monuments are typically like very ancient Native American burial sites or sites of old villages, frontier villages, things like that. Some of our old forts from the Civil War or from our move out over the frontier lands have been designated as monuments, and those are all really appropriate uses of monument designation. They're usually very small, ranging anywhere from like 2 to 30 acres, and they surround a specific object of value that should be preserved for perpetuity for everybody to learn about and enjoy. In contrast, though, the monuments that we're talking about tonight, like the Range of Light, Chuckwalla, Kashan, and others, are all what we call landscape level designations that comprise many hundreds of thousands of acres or over 1 million acres each. And that's where the object of value that's named is the landscape itself. And that's very clearly outside the bounds of what is appropriate for monument designation. And so that's another piece of the overreach of government powers that we would like to rein in and hold accountable and make sure that these kinds of designations don't perpetuate over and over in the future. Again, there's a lot more content here than what would be reasonable to read to you, so I hope you read it, and you can also get these slides out to everybody after our time together tonight. Do you want to say anything more about the context?
There's a lot of other panelists, so we could.
Yeah. I mean, you might hear about
It'll be a long night.
But also slowly enough that it's understandable. So yeah, we'll try to. We have so much good information here. So the Range of Light was originally proposed through Congress. It failed, and so I do want to note that if you wanted to get some more details about what's contained in the current proposal, it matches what was proposed in 2021. It hasn't changed. But it's important to note that an attempt was made to have our congressional representatives vote and approve this monument as they're representing us, we the people. And that attempt failed because Congress could not justify designating this much land when they take into consideration the impacts to everybody who lives, works, and recreates in the area. So there's that. All right, so now one of our very hot topics tonight, we have a few. But one of them is forest management and catastrophic wildfire prevention. I know for anybody who lives in the Central Valley, the foothills, or the mountains of the Central Sierra, you've all gone through, as I have, the Creek Fire, the Rough Fire, the Canopy Complex Fire, and many others. There's several to mention over the last decade. And we've seen how those fires have death and harmed the wildlife, taken away opportunities for cattle grazing, burned down homes and cabins and communities, and it's really been quite devastating. So when we're thinking about monument designation here, forest management and wildfire prevention becomes a very important topic to consider because the vision that's been laid out by Unite the Parks is to return the land to natural state, which is essentially very similar to a wilderness designation where it's hands-off management, where they basically let the land be wild. And they rewild anything that they feel is not quite wild enough. And again, if you've lived or recreated in the area or own a business, you know that that hands-off approach where we've already had a lot of restrictions to logging, to fuel management, to vegetation reduction, has led to the conditions that spawn fires like the Creek Fire, because we've had very overly dense forests just grow more and more vegetation without it coming out through man-made uses like logging or biofuel or other methods. And it's been left to stand and die. And of course, that created the conditions for the bark beetle, and that primed the queue even more for the Creek Fire and other fires. So I'm not going to say any more because I know we have a lot of information coming from our panel, but really quickly from Unite the Parks, one of the reasons that we have had such difficulty in achieving what needs to be done through logging and biofuel extraction and vegetation management it's because of organizations like Unite the Parks, where as one organization, they have themselves pursued 31 logging projects through litigation. These are projects that would have extracted saleable timber or just timber that needed to be pulled out to create a healthier landscape. Unite the Parks philosophy is that we shouldn't be touching the woods in that way. And so they've been actively engaged in litigation to stop projects that were approved and funded through the Forest Service to make sure that chainsaws and shovels and tractors and all the equipment never hit the ground. So that's an important piece to keep in mind. Here's some slides. Everybody knows the creek fire. I'm gonna go past that and get to Tom Hobby. Tom is CEO of Yosemite Clean Energy, and I'm gonna hand it over and let you share a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Rose. And I get a clicker. I'm in trouble now because I've got a clicker. So, all right. Yes, I'm a forest economist. I grew up in Mariposa, 4 generations here in the Sierras. About 25 years ago, I was sitting actually right here in some of these, meetings in this building with the Sierra Forest, and I thought, I can sit here like you folks and kind of bellyache to myself for the next 25 years, or I can do something about it. So I packed up and went back for a piece of spaghetti after my name that told me that I at least did, and how do we mitigate wildfire hazard. And really the big elephant in the room is the cost of wildfires. And when I started looking at this as a researcher, I thought, wow, this is the elephant in the room that our government is not really taking a serious look at. That led me down a path of getting involved in bioenergy development for the last 20 years. And we started really kind of the elephant in the room as far as costs. They came out with a report about a year ago. The U.S. Senate basically analyzed the true cost of all the wildfires, and it was shocking. And if you look at the numbers there, it's over 300 billion with a B to over 890 billion, yes, with a B, per year over the last decade. Now let's just kind of reduce that down to right here where we're talking in our backyard in the Sierra National Forest on the right. And we've had about a third of our Sierra Forest burned over the last basically decade. And the associated costs by taking, kind of translate from the Senate report over to the right-hand side over here, we're looking at about $1 billion, what's coming out of taxpayers' pockets. We're losing all the values that Rose had talked about for not only recreation and all the other values, but that has a real cost. And I think one of the big questions, we stand back and listening to why this should be a congressional decision and has a chance for people to give opinions, looking at the costs and benefits. Nobody here would go out and say, hey, we're going to build a house and didn't do a budget and count the cost. And that's kind of the issue here, that they're not counting the cost, what it's going to take to manage all these lands that they want to protect, they say. But it goes back to this whole philosophy that land needs to be managed. We talk about just walking in here that, if you left your garden out there for 5 years and walked into the backyard, you're going to see one heck of a mess in your yard, right? You have to manage. These forests are like a garden. They need to be managed. The other part, kind of a personal passion, there's some pictures here of, the Nelda Grove was the place I grew up. Took kids there for about 2 decades. It got nuked in the railroad fire. And the rest of the Sierra, we have nearly 20% of the giant sequoias have been destroyed by wildfire. That's a personal passion. When I met King Charles for the first time at COP26, we had our Yosemite Clean little banner there, and he asked me this question: are we going to lose all the sequoias due to the wildfires in California? It's a big question. If we don't act and start managing, we have a huge risk of that. Again, if you want to look at the details of the Senate report, this is another thing to talk to your folks in Congress, your local folks. These costs are shocking. If you add it all up and divide it by the acres, it would come over to over $50,000 an acre of the cost if you add it all up. And some of the top ones are basically here on the real estate value is pretty obvious, but the wildfire smoke, people don't realize the smoke and healthcare costs. Look how huge that is, $200 billion, okay? Obviously, the other issues of watershed costs, when they did the Hayman accounting back in 2003, the city of Denver lost $1.5 billion just to restore their watershed. And I could go on and on. So these are issues that are important for us to consider why managing the Sierra Forest was really a monument. Another issue is the wildfire severity. We've had the aha moment. Sorry, I couldn't find a map because they haven't published it yet on the creek fire. But it said that basically about 40% is the high severity impact of this wildfire for the soil severity. So if you look at basically what it does to the soils, you basically make it like a parking lot. Hydrophobic soils cannot penetrate water. You can't get trees to regrow. It comes back brush. And we have a huge issue that, 40% is a lot of the land base that's going to be just brush for many generations before we can see a forest again. An even bigger issue is this whole climate topic. And I know there's different sides and opinions on this, but if we really take climate serious, and I asked Secretary John Kerry this straight up here a couple years ago at a reception I was at, I said, we're doing all this carbon accounting in the world, but we don't include wildfire. We're missing the point, because it's the elephant in the room. We have almost as many emissions from wildfires as we do all of emissions in California. In 2020, it was the second highest, and you can see the chart on the right. So if we're really serious about carbon and all this stuff in climate, we have to manage our forests and reduce the fire hazard. We can, with intentional management, reduce at least 80% of that wildfire, not only the risk, but the associated fire acreage and the damage, all the severity that I just talked about. Again, the why, I don't have to tell probably anybody in this room that, if you look at the Sierra National Forest, we've over doubled the number of trees in the last 100 years that are out there. You add drought and all the stuff they talk about climate, bottom line is we just have too many straws in the cup. Everything is turning into dead trees. We had 150 million in the whole Sierra, and that's part of the issue, that managing these trees, we can't just let it be, natural, like we said, a natural ecosystem. We double the trees and they're dead. The wildfires are going to be the solution. Nature's going to take care of it. We need to mechanically thin, reduce the fuel, take that biomass, and I'll talk about this in a minute, and we can utilize that instead of being a liability and a cost of billions of dollars, we can make it into $1 billion of biofuels. This report, oh, I'm missing something here, I'm going to give you the whole slide. The watershed, I don't know what happened here, but basically they did a study on the management of California forests, and they said that 10% of our water yield would increase. That'd be several million acre feet of water for this valley, for farmers, for people to be able to have an economy, and it basically ties the forest to the farms. And so it's another reason why we can't just lock this up. We need to manage it to allow the water to flow and help that keep the valley jobs that are here in the valley. Again, I apologize, I don't know what happened. This is the whole Sierra. There's about 14 million acres in this headwaters, and that's a significant amount of acreage, but that's what keeps California not only alive in the economy, but keeps people, in the cities. They need to realize that where their water comes from. Oops. Back on the science of this, somebody's asking, like, why should we cut the trees? There are a lot of people that are opposed to actively managing. Maybe 56 years ago, we couldn't get to the level of details of science. We have the best environmental laws and protections in this state and in this country in the world. We have satellite data, we have ground data, we have computer AI models that can basically account for everything that walks, crawls, flies, or swims. There's nothing that can't go under the radar when it comes to stewardship. And when we manage these forests, we can give a true account to the public and stand here on this stage and tell people that, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to impact, here's the pluses and minuses, and that's something that we didn't have 40, 50 years ago that we have today. Again, looking at the cost, if we just had to go out to the Sierra Forest and implement 500,000 acres of fuel treatment and say 25 tons of the acre, it would be about $1 billion program of a liability, come out of taxpayer dollars, and we just don't have that much. We have a few $1 million a year that's trickling into California thinning projects. Some folks on the stage here are doing that hard work. I've done some myself, still have dirt on my fingernails, but that's a lot of money to go to do the work that's needed to be done. If we flip that around, I don't know what happened to my slides here, but something's going on with PowerPoint, but we can take basically this wood that's burning, dying, and rotting, and I apologize here, but this is supposed to be a gasification slide. If we can use this gasification, we can take wood into a gas, can make biofuels. We equate about, for 1 ton of wood, we can make 77 kilograms of hydrogen, about 65 gallons of biofuel, which is like aviation fuel or diesel. If you take that and look at what that does, instead of throwing away all this wood, which is, we're chewing it up or burning it, or the wildfires are taking care of it, we could create nearly $800 a ton of value. When I ran some quick numbers here in the Sierra, we could generate nearly about $400+ million a year in over, say, a 20-year program. There'd be like a $9.5 billion program that would generate revenue. So instead of begging for more subsidy dollars and hoping Forest Service would come along, this could pay for itself and could create jobs in the rural economy That's why Yosemite Clean, we're here, we have the technology, it's, we have all the patents and the guarantees, it's got performance guarantees, and the market's here. We've signed basically a 10-year offtake for hydrogen in this state that will buy all the hydrogen we can produce. So again, back to conclusions. Why should we consider managing a forest versus having a monument? It's pretty clear up here that healthy forests need management. Again, there's nothing wrong with the parks. I love it. I grew up in Yosemite, it's my backyard. There's a place for that conservation. But when we've had logging and fire suppression in our forest practices for 100 years, it left a totally different ecosystem that was here when first settlers came to the state. We can't just go back and just throw this into Walt Disney in the corner and Bambi. You think, all right, we're going to just look at it and let nature take its course. It will destroy these forests. And I stand here because I love the Sierra National Forest. I've grown up there, it's been my playground. I want my children and my children's children to see a green forest that's healthy and productive. The rest of this stuff, there's a website that you can look at, and I won't go into all the details here. Really, the main issue is that nature-based solutions will pay. There's more to gain by managing this land than just letting it be static. And I think with that, I'll just turn it over to the next speaker. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom. And one of the cool things about the work that Tom is doing is that he is turning what would be just excess biomass. We have so much extra fuel up in our mountains that is hazardous for wildfires. He's turning that into fuel that we can all use. Hydrogen, diesel, some amazing things that are really, really clean energy and inexpensive to do when you look at the cost ratio. So that's the solution that we need to be pursuing further. Also, just for some quick context, when he talks about historic conditions of the landscape versus what we have now, the healthy ratio of trees per acre in this dry coniferous forest that we have in Sierra National Forest is 80 to 100 trees per acre. And this land has always been managed by humans because long before settlers came, Native Americans actively managed the land to keep it in prime condition for hunting, for gathering and foraging, and they actively removed trees and underbrush to cultivate that healthy landscape because that was their home. And so we've never had an era for many hundreds of years in which the landscape has not been actively managed. By contrast, the amount of fuel that we have, so it's like 100 times what it should be. And we could be turning that excess biomass into hydrogen and diesel and all sorts of other amazing products that will help all of us and maybe bring our energy costs down. So let's transition to Kirby. Kirby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I on?
You are now on.
Hello.
So Kirby Mullen is resource manager for Terra Bella Sawmill. Go right ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm scared. This is scary. I'm a public speaker. I jotted down some notes, and I'm going to read off these notes. And if I would have thought about it, I would have tapered them a little bit. But there's a point. There's times in life when you don't taper, when you ramp up. And so I'm just going to read these notes. And I'm an old man, and sometimes old men don't care. So bear with me. My name is Kirby D. Mullen, and I'm the resource manager for Sierra Forest Products in Terra Bella, California. I've worked in the forest products industry for 49 years. I have 2 college degrees in my profession, and I'm a registered professional forester in the state of California. My license is number 2313, and I have maintained my forester's license since July of 1986. Said more crudely, I come with street credibility on the southern Sierra forest conditions. As my late father would say, I know of what I speak. Sierra Forest Products is the lone remaining large lumber manufacturer south of Tuolumne County. There's smaller ones around, but we're the materials for a sawmill. Now, some of us I guess maybe I'm a little bit unique here, but I've lived this before. I've dealt with this stuff before. Maybe Jack has or whatever. We've seen the impacts of national monuments in the past, and they are not good. In fact, the results are horrid. In 1999, then President Bill Clinton flew into Meadow Field in Bakersfield, California on Air Force One on April 15th, 2000. He then boarded Marine One to fly to the Trail of the 100 Giants, where he declared the giant Sequoia National Monument. That's south of here, Tulare County. I was there in the crowd as Marine One flew over my head. As I recall, the giant Sequoia National Monument was declared, and again it was used the American Antiquities Act of 1906. It was declared with one page. A one-page document that made a statement with the president's name on it. If you went out to try and split a piece of land, the documents would be yay thick. One page. Something wrong with that. Sierra Forest Products during the 1990s operated a large production sawmill in the small town of Dinuba in Tulare County. That sawmill had been in business since 1948. And it relied on raw materials from within the giant Sequoia footprint. That sawmill in Dinuba closed in midsummer of 2000. In other words, 3 or 4 or 5 months later, we closed that sawmill down because of the monument declaration, never to open again. The human toll was the termination of a lifestyle employment of approximately 120, and I don't mean men or women, I mean families. Never to open again. Our current sawmill in Terabello was reduced from 2 shifts to 1 shift. The human toll of this monument was catastrophic. Why did this occur? Because of the resulting restrictions on management activities within the forest created by the monument. In a document, and I was looking at this today, in a document produced by the National Park Service in 2021, it states that the mega fire incident in 2020, and this is just one of those incidents, called the Castle Fire, resulted in killing, and this is their quote, 10% to 14% of all large sequoias across the tree's natural range in the Sierra Nevada. Killed them. They're dead. You can go find them. Additional fires have killed up to 20% plus of the existing large giant sequoia specimen trees. Completely dead. Never to recover, mainly due because of lack of management on the acreage being declared a national monument. Our Native American friends sometimes refer to these giant sequoia specimen trees as the ancients. Now just plant that in your head. And some of those trees are, you've seen them, they're as big as Bermuda Jack right there. They're huge. Based on my professional experience and my past history in the first monument, I believe the environmental impacts of a range of light monument will be catastrophic. The impact on the environment and human toll will cause huge damage to the culture of Mariposa, Madera, Fresno, and Tulare counties. I might have thought about this beforehand and changed it, but I'm not going to change this. I urge you not to believe any of the promises from the supporters of the Range of Light Monument based on what happened in the past with the giant Sequoia National Monument. Bear with me.
You're doing great. I gotta run real quick. I'll be right back.
Give you cover. Under the American Antiquities Act of 1906, which drives the proclamation of these, last page, of these monuments, there is little as citizens, and this may be an incorrect statement, but I'm going to throw it out there, because this gentleman on the end, you know, there's strategies out here to combat this. But let me just continue here. There's little we as citizens can do to stop the current president from declaring these acres as a monument. I will say, as a God-fearing man, my prayers are that the Range of Light Monument will never be established and the people of the counties impacted will continue to be free to use the lands of the Sierra National Forest as they were originally intended. To hunt, why do you guys do this? But to hunt, to access, to enjoy, and to manage. And there's many other things. We need access to this land. We don't need to be locked out. And I'll finish up with this. I guarantee with all my professional knowledge that if this Range of Light Monument is allowed to be declared, mega fires such as the Creek Fire we have experienced in the past will continue to burn vast acreages. In addition, many of the giant sequoias located within Nelner Grove and McKinley Grove will ultimately be doomed to fiery death. I believe history from the past, Giant Sequoia National Monument will prove that to be so. In closing, do not believe what you're being told by the supporters of the monument, but look to the past as an example of what will happen in the future.
Thank you, Kirby. I very highly value the voice of experience, and he's lived through it, as have many here. And we do have to look at history if we're going to learn from it and not repeat it. And so that's what we're facing today. I want to say we're actually making good time based on everything we have to go through. So I don't want you all to feel super rushed. But we're spending a lot of time on the forestry issue because it is so central to this Range of Light proposal. Next, we have and loggers in the audience. Thank you for coming out of the mountain to join us tonight. We have such a wealth of knowledge of what is needed to be done. So let me hand it over to Jack. And let's hear it.
Right on.
Hi, my son's the president of South Fork Forest Solutions. Can you hear me? Okay, very good. One thing, they're covering some really good facts here, and I want you to know one thing, that there's nothing natural about the Sierra National Forest and the parks. It is not a natural setting. When my family settled there in South Fork and bought the ranch from the Peckinpahs, they said, oh, you can ride a horse to the top of Peckinpah Mountain to the Peckinpah Meadow. And I set chokers there in 1979 underneath the helicopter, and I could not only ride a horse or a motorcycle, I had to crawl through the damn brush to get around. So what happens with this thing, it's ever evolving. When I grew up in the 60s there, they called the Sierra the asbestos forest, and it just didn't burn. And it grew and grew and grew. If you were a kid and you wanted to go cut a cord of wood, you really had to look hard. And what happened was that it just grew so many trees, and you get this, it's a Mediterranean climate or whatever, you get the droughts every 10 years, and they couldn't sustain it. And that's when I went to work for Columbia Helicopters in '79. We were salvage logging on Peckinpah there. And Alan Kwan, he was a timber management officer on the Forest Service, and I said, geez, there's probably 50 million feet up there. And he said, no, I think there's only 30. Well, right now there's maybe 3 loads of logs left on that hill. It's a real shame, and I wanted to bring up a couple of things here. Our company, we do cut the length, site prep, we've got skidders and cats and shovels. Today at 4 o'clock, my kid didn't want me to leave. We have to get a unit done, and the pile, I was piling with our 50-ton shovel, and you couldn't put it in this room. And to make a pile and to burn it is a real shame. But they're cleaning it up, and they're gonna plant it, and it'll be better in 10 years. But it's a real shame that has to happen like that. And I wanted to mention a couple of things. The Giant Sequoia Emergency Response, they came up with that a couple of years ago, the Forest Service, to try to to do something about not burning up all the giant sequoias. And my son and I did a couple of them down on the Sequoia there, Indian Basin and Long Meadow. And as Kirby said, Clinton flew in to designate the monument there. Well, I logged that 600 acres 2 years ago, and I can tell you that he didn't make a good decision, because I saw 50,000-year-old trees plus that perished in that fire. So, yeah, okay. and not cool. And you know why the Forest Service did this? It's 13,500 acres, but they wanted to reduce the fuel loading around the sequoias so they would survive. It's a good thing. But what about the rest of the forest? I want to tell you, in my travels, you know, you don't have to, if you pay attention, you like what you're doing, some of it's going to rub off on you. You don't have to be too smart. So when I'm wandering around out in the woods, you see a big yellow pine, ponderosa pine, or a sugar pine. On the uphill side of one that's 300 or 400 years old, there's a cat face, you know, an opening where the fire had burned up around it, and on the uphill side. And lightning fires, every 7 to 15 years, that tree would see a fire. Well, in the Creek Fire, we burned up most of those trees. You know, not cool. And what's that say as a people that Gifford Pinchot started this whole thing in 1900, and here we are, we burned up 20% of the giant sequoias, and a lot of the big pine on different forests. I've worked in about 12 different states, and what's going on in the Sierra is dynamic. You know, we get a lot of rain, deep soils. It's a beautiful place to be. But if we turn this in, give it to the Department of Interior, it'll be catastrophic, because these dead trees are going to collapse. Who's going to go out there in a bunch of snags and a bunch of timber and that's down on the ground and try to put a line around it on a lightning fire? They're not going to. So as Kirby said, we're going to have catastrophic fires. You know, and a tree that's standing doesn't burn as well as one, but I can tell you they're coming down on the ground, and that's why, you know, the Forest Service is out there trying to do as much site prep as they can, and that's a good thing. But if the Department of Interior gets it, it's doomed. My family, we go to Mammoth Pool. We did go to Mammoth Pool for 30 years straight, to China Bar. And every time I go up there, we did a 365 acre site prep at Clover Meadow. And I went up there, and it just bothered me to go through there and look at all that dead timber. But I had to tell myself, it's still beautiful, it's just different, which is a shame. But I had to do that to get to that point. So anyway, I just think that we got to get in, and if you want it to be natural, you know, the way it was 200 years ago, you better fire up some chainsaws and get some markets and get things cleared out, and then use fire as a maintenance tool to keep it that way. And all the logs can go to making electricity and be a byproduct for the sawmills. So that's what needs to happen, and I don't know if I can do anything about this monument. I wish I could, but the Sequoia one was a travesty, and if we have it on the Sierra, it'll probably be worse. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. So we've heard a lot from Jack and Tom and Kirby, and I wanted to note that one of the plans that Sierra National Forest has successfully done is our revised land management plan, which actually just got finalized it's within the last year. I'm going to lose my dates in my mind. Anyhow, that plan includes some much more aggressive plans for logging and biofuel extraction than we've been able to achieve in the past. And it's because of the negative trend that they've seen with the over-densification. They're going more earnestly towards active management, despite all the litigation that's being thrown at them from extreme environmentalist organizations. So we have a plan in place that makes sense and that would allow them to do what they need to do. For Kirby's operations at Terabella Sawmill, they rely on 20 million board feet of timber from Sierra National Forest every year to remain in operations. And so if this monument proposal is designated, that will eradicate their supply to remain in operation, and Terabella will be another victim of the downfall of sawmills in California. We only have 5 sawmills left, and this is one of them. And so it's very important for that regard as well. Last thing I want to mention on the forestry issue is that the staff at Sierra National Forest, they're of course not able to make a formal position on this. As Jack just mentioned, if this is designated, it would go to Department of the Interior, because National Park Service runs through Department of the Interior, where the U.S. Forest Service runs through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So they're both federal agencies, but they run under different branches and they operate much differently. Anyhow, they're sister agencies, and so Sierra National Forest, they're just in a sticky position. They can't come out and make a declarative statement, but they have provided some really comprehensive and helpful information on what active management of the forest looks like and what they are trying to do, despite being handcuffed by litigation and other issues, in a nice multi-page handout that they brought here in printed form for you to pick up. So we have 200 copies on the table, the California table out front. I encourage everybody to grab a copy and read through it. It was too much that we would be able to include in our time here tonight, so I was grateful for them to bring it by. But it goes into even more detail about what these men are trying to achieve through their various operations and provides a lot more context. So moving on, I also wanted to introduce Jeff Aiello. Welcome back to the stage.
This chair is way better than that chair. All right, thank you, Rose. Thanks for doing this. Let's give it up for Rose, man. Put this thing together. And all of you too. I'm actually more interested in sitting in the audience and listening to these guys who are a lot smarter. Bobby, brother. And learning a lot more. But I just want to say a couple of things before we get going, before I get into it. I sat and listened to the seminar that Deanna Wolf did, what was it, about a month and a half ago? To educate myself on what this Rachel-led proposal was. And how, show of hands, who else in the room sat in and listened to that seminar? Okay, so not a lot of us, right? And like you guys, what's that? Yeah, right. They snuck it in there. And so, like I did, you probably sat there with your jaw dropped listening to Deanna, which I've told people, and I've said this on the radio too, sounded like she was taking her tone, like this was a done deal. And that's what motivated me through, my wife Jill's right here too, by the way, and Jill and I have started a Facebook page during the Creek Fire called Talk of the Hill. Some of you guys might be on that. And we went, thank you guys, thank you. But what I'm looking at right now in front of me is exactly what we see our part in this is, which is getting the word out and getting our community fired up and getting everybody down in this damn room down in Clovis and listening to these folks and organizing and being active and engaged in what's going on. A couple of things real quick I'll say. I'm really glad to hear about the litigation going on against the Antiquities Act. The Antiquities Act, it's called Antiquities because it was designed to protect Native American sites really at the beginning, because people were pillaging these sites back around the turn of the century. And there was no mechanism really for Congress or any law enforcement to really act on that. So that's why it was born. And it specifically says in the language, and I think you hit on it or Rose hit on it, that it's primarily there to protect small objects or native sites or important historical sites at the smallest footprint necessary. It says that in the law. And
which means every acre in the state of Utah.
Right, and think about it, 1.4 million acres. I mean, we have some important archaeological sites. Most of them, or a lot of them, are in the foothills. But heck, I was hiking around in the forest with Ned McDougal here not too long ago, and we found some Indian grinding stones up there, and the mortar holes and all that stuff. So there's important sites here. But that act is being abused, and if we win or not, if we prevail on this range of light situation, we'll find out, right? But that's, to me, We need to focus on the bigger picture, which is the mechanism that the environmentalists are using to come get this land, and the federal government is using to get this land, and that is this Antiquities Act. So if Biden doesn't sign this thing and we get it by the goalie this time, I don't believe we should all just sit back on our laurels and go, whew, we dodged a bullet, because they're coming again. And then the last thing I just want to say is this. As you pointed out, Rose, at the beginning, we already have the Parks United in the Central Sierra through a wonderful network of wilderness areas and national parks. And we have 3 national parks in our market, if you will, right here. And then we have some of the best wilderness areas anywhere. And I've been to a lot of them, as some of you know, for what I do through work. And so I think it's really important, and I want this to be sort of a battle cry for all of you, because you are really at the core of this. We have to have fair use in our mountains. We can't just have a monoculture of use. If you want a wilderness experience, you can have that. If you want to go to a national park, by golly, we got that. We got 3 good ones right here. But if this happens and these lands are shut down, there's going to be millions of people, and I don't say that lightly, there's going to be millions of people that cannot go and recreate in the way that we all love to. You know, not everybody can get on a plane with their family and go to Maui for the week, right? But a lot of these, and even the families that can, still like to go to the damn mountains and camp out. They want to go have that experience. They want to be able to enjoy their off-highway vehicle. They want to be able to enjoy the mountains, fishing and hunting, or whatever it is they want to do. But the very use, I mean, the Sierra National Forest slogan is called the land of many uses. It says it on the dang sign. Last time I drove by Chipo Saddle. And so I just think it's important that we all stay engaged. I think we all get the importance of the forest management aspect of it. We know we're dealing with complete crazy people, like the Chad Hansons of the world, when we say, let it burn, or we say we're not going to manage these resources. It's insane. And yet, because they've got a PhD next to their name, we're all supposed to go, okay, yeah, you're right. And none of these people, or very few of these people, have any real practical boots on the ground experience like all of you have. Just keep the fight going. Thank you guys for being down here today. You know what? I'm going to do something right now. I got to take a selfie with you guys. This is too good. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, you guys. Thanks for letting me get up here and nap for a little bit. I'll get you back. I'm going to go back down.
Thank you very much, Jeff. The need for engagement ongoing is really why we're all here tonight. So we're going to get to calls to action at the end of our time after some Q&A. And so I really urge you all to pay attention to that you still will hear from in achieving the ends that will put a stop to this now as well as in the future. But next, let's hear from Bobby McCauley, District 5 Supervisor for Madera County.
The stage, I think when I'm sitting down, it feels like there's less of you. Like I agree with Cody, when I stand up, it's actually a little scary. But yeah, my name is Bobby McCauley. I'm a Madera County Supervisor. As County Supervisor, I represent the communities of North Fork, Bass Lake, Oakhurst, Coarse Gold, Ahwahnee, a lot of the areas that actually would be included within this proposal, right? And so as County Supervisor, 2 of my big priorities are fire safety. It's also the economic prosperity of the folks that I represent. And so for me, this proposal really flies in the face of 2 of those major goals for myself. So as County Supervisor, I work very closely with CAL FIRE. I work very closely with our Forest Service on building more robust fire protection. I also work with a lot of our county partners. That's our Resource Conservation and Development Council, as well as our Fire Safe Council, on increasing the pace and scale of projects. Because we understand that we need to do more projects within both public and private lands in order to create more fire safe and more resilient communities, right? And so one of those organizations we do a lot of work with is called Yosemite Sequoia Resource Conservation and Development Council. It is a mouthful. I also happen to be the president of that organization. But that nonprofit actually goes out, they secure millions of dollars worth of grants. They have what's called a master stewardship agreement with Forest Service, which really means they're kind of a preferred partner for Forest Service to come onto their land and do work, or our land, I should say, and do that needed forest management work. Because what we know is that you cannot preserve something that is in a state of disrepair. And as some of these folks who are much more intelligent than I am have stated already, our forests are very sick. We have very dense forests, we have very high fuel loads. In fact, I was reviewing with previous county supervisor Gary Gilbert, we were reviewing some literature from 1990 in which he was stating that at that time our fuel loads were way too high. And of course, you remove logging, you have so many delays in projects. Since that time, 30 more years of mismanagement, and we're left with what we have today. So again, we cannot preserve what is in a state of disrepair. And again, we go back to one of my other priorities, which is the economic prosperity of the people I represent, right? So in Madera County, about 7% of our discretionary dollars, about $7 million, $8 million a year, comes from what's called transient occupancy taxes. So that's the people that come visit and stay in Madera County. We also have about 11% of our discretionary budget is from sales tax. And so what that means to me is when we have a reduction in people that come and live and stay and play in Madera County, that affects my ability to fund essential services. And so in Madera County, 76% of our discretionary dollars actually go to public safety. And so when we have dips in sales tax, when we have dips in people coming to stay, like we saw this past summer as a result of Yosemite's visitor access management plan, right, the reservation system. I'm not sure if you folks are all familiar with that in Yosemite, but we saw dips in visitation at that time, and that impacts our ability to provide essential services, as I said. So whether that is our fire station in Oakers or our homeless coordinator through the sheriff's office, those services are impacted when fewer people come to visit. And so I'm deeply concerned by any effort that would change, the visitation patterns of you folks who like to come visit us in the Sierra National Forest. In fact, we want to increase the amount of visitation that happens in the forest. And so that's why through Yosemite Sequoia Resource Conservation and Development Council, not only are we working to increase the scale of forest management projects, we're actually looking to see how we can bring more roads back into the Forest Service mileage system. Because we know there's a lot of roads out there that they took out of the system back in 2012, 2013. We want to take a look at some of those roads and see if we can find a way to mitigate the impacts of the use of those roads and bring them back into the system. Because we know that's what the people want. So this is the kind of work that we want to see in the forest. We want to see folks working through our private partners. So I think I've heard from Forest Service staff in the past that they want to be in the business of reviewing plans, not writing plans. And what that means is they earnestly want to partner with the community. They want to partner with folks like the stewards of the Sierras, who when the county was able to get them $350,000 post-Creek Fire, they were able to clear 27 miles of roads, along with 36 miles of trails with $350,000. I'd like to see Forest Service accomplish that. Thank you, my friends from the state of the Sierra. So I think ultimately when we think about this proposal, for me, it's something that I would never do in the manner that it was brought forward. Not just the content in which is in the document, but the manner it was brought forward. I think Rose touched on it before, that they tried to do this through legislative action at a certain point, and it failed. And so now they're taking another action. They're going to have the president try to sign it and make it, a law. But we talked about the Forest Service land management plan, but we didn't talk about the fact that it took them 10 years to develop that land management plan. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and it's not just because government's slow. It's because we see a rapidly changing environment within our forests. We see more fires, we see tree mortality, we see bark beetles, we see the forest changing. And so what we had to do is we had to reevaluate how we're gonna manage the forest. And when we were done receiving comments from not just local jurisdictions, not just experts in forest health, not just the environmentalists, but when we saw comments from all the communities, all the stakeholders, we were left with a document that I think everybody can be proud of. That's a document that took 10 years to create. And so why would we replace that document with something that is more of an idea, right? It's a cart before the horse. That's not how we do business. That's not how we do business in Madera County. That's not how we do business in the United States. It's un-American. And so for me, that's my biggest problem. And we go back to the Antiquities Act. And so I think that's why there is a need for continued action as we move forward. So with that, go ahead and pass it back to Rose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bobby. It's really important that we have the support of our local governments, and it's important to note that all 4 counties that border this proposed range of light monument, from Mariposa County to Madera to Fresno and even Tulare on the south end. Tulare doesn't necessarily precisely touch the range of light borders, but it's right there. They're even joining with us, and all 4 county boards of supervisors from those counties have sent letters to Biden, as well as to other agencies within the federal government, to urge them to not sign this proposed range of light monument. So I think we have much encouragement for that, and thank you, Bobby, for joining with us. We also have there's so much more to be said about local government support, but yeah, it's worth the recognition. We also have the support of Congressman Vince Hong, who is our recent replacement for Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and the district he represents is partially within the footprint of this proposed national monument. And so we have one of Congressman Hong's staff members, Ireland, with us tonight. Would you like to share your
Thank you for having me here tonight. One of my favorite things to say is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But no, that is, I'm here on behalf of the congressman. He's currently in DC right now. They have votes tomorrow, and he said he couldn't make it. But that's the statement that it is terrifying when you hear it. I mean, your big government, we want our local governments, we want our small communities, and to have big government come and step in and say, hey, we're going to make this a big portion, and we're going to take away a lot of the things that you guys can do here. That's a little scary. Our livelihoods are there. We have so many jobs. I mean, raise your hand if you have a job that is impacted by this. Anyone here? See, we've got a lot here, and it's a big deal. And the congressman he wants to state that, no, we are not in support of this. We are in support, of course, of using our public lands and being able to let our constituents do that. We don't have a lot of the actual monument itself, but our constituents are impacted by it, and it affects everyone here. I know it affects me. I am an avid hiker and outdoors person. I love to fly fish and go out, and all of that kind of stuff is impacted by this. So I don't have much to say yet. I've worked with different tribes in our community, the Bottlottle tribe and the Tule River tribe. We've done prescribed burns before, and we've seen how it's helped. And when you put something like this in effect, you can't do that stuff. And if you do, you have to jump through a lot more bureaucratic loops, and it's not easy to do that. And we don't want to do that to you guys. So I'll be talking later about some stuff, but that's kind of an overview, and I'll always be available if you guys ever need anything.
Thank you so much, Ireland, for sharing your time to come. And when we're getting to Q&A, then I know that she'll have a lot of feedback to share with everybody as well. We also have a surprise guest tonight from new Assemblyman David Tagipaw's office. So would you like to share with us?
Thank you, Rose, for having us. My name is Austin Gilbert. I'm the new district director for David Tongapa, who we just swore in on Monday last week. I'll be quick. I know we have a lot to say, but we've already gotten to work. Our first bill, AB 66, It directly addresses forest management. It gives counties the ability to manage their public lands and their roads and their easements and create fire breaks. And it's something that I saw Supervisor Magnuson in here. We actually took that idea from Fresno County, who has been really good at managing those easements, creating those fire breaks. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Supervisor McCauley and what everyone else has been able to do on this panel. But in the short, we are extremely opposed to this. We actually wrote a letter as well to President Biden from multiple assembly members. Supervisors signed on. So thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting us. If anyone needs any state resources, you know where to find me now. So.
Thank you. That was one of the greatest pop-ins, so we really appreciate you coming. So we're going to segue away from forest management and wildfire prevention. We also touched on some economic impacts, and we are now needing to be a little bit more urgent with time, but we do want to talk about outdoor recreation access because that's a big piece of how Sierra National Forest is enjoyed. So to start us off, I just wanted to quickly show you a map of the Unite the Parks vision for what roads would remain open. As you can see, in the whole span of that 1.4 million acres, this is literally the number of roads that would remain open. And the gray ones, you can see 168 going up to Edison and Florence. You can see DP Road going out towards Washon and Courtright. There's a handful of the brown roads that would be remaining in dirt, but everything else would be closed or changed in status so that nobody could traverse them. Additionally, any roads that remain open would only be accessible by street legal vehicles, which is really important because that means then that all of your ATVs, your UTVs, side-by-sides, most of your Jeeps, most of your overlanding vehicles would not be able to even enter this area anymore. That impacts not only people who like to drive those vehicles, but everybody who likes to get back there for all the other uses, which we'll touch on. By contrast, here's a map of Sierra National Forest as it exists today. There's way too many roads than you can see clearly in the map. We have a lot of access, but it's well-managed access. As you all know, when you get back there, there are innumerable pockets of little tiny lakes and hidden campsites and areas that you can go and be secluded to privately hunt deer or bear or take pictures of birds, whatever it is you like to do. We get to enjoy all of that with well-managed forest and access. And so this is one of the key things that we don't want to have taken away. So to start us off on this section, we have stewards of Sierra National Forest joining us. And so we're going to move it a little bit more of a clip, and just let me know when you want me to click your slides.
Thank you, Rose. I really appreciate that. My name is Mike Womble. I'm the president of Stewards of Sierra National Forest. And we got started back in 2008 during the travel management rule, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. They wanted to take away cross-country travel. And originally we started out to fight that, and pretty soon we figured out the best way to work with Forest Service is work within them, and we became one of their key tools for management on the forest. A couple of things that happening this year. This year alone, the stewards, which have a crew out in the forest every Wednesday, weather permitting, put in 3,660 volunteer hours. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. I think our youngest person is close to 70. Okay? We cleared over 112 miles of roads and trails. We installed over 30 route markers. This year was kind of a low year for us. We only took out 1,235 trees. That's it. Previous years, we generally average around 3,000 to 5,000 trees that were coming down across the roads and trails. We cleared a lot of culverts, removed a lot of rocks. You know, the management thing with the range of light is just bad all around. We already have connected corridors with the wilderness areas. The Pacific Crest Trail connects everything up there. I just don't think we need it anymore. I think the forest is strapped in what they can do with the funding that they get, and they completely rely on volunteer groups. And a lot of you out there are all part of volunteer groups, and I take my hat off to all of you out there. Everybody knows the sacrifice that volunteers put in, their time, their efforts, their expenses, and it's really important, and I believe that our Forest Supervisor, Dean Gould, understands that volunteer services are an integral part of that. Recreation is a huge thing. You know, recreation in the state of California has increased over 1,500% in the last 10 years, and that's pretty phenomenal when you think about it. people want to get out. People just don't want to sit at home. They want to get out. They want to get out. They want to recreate. They want to spend time with their families. Okay, so I think recreation is really important, and I believe that range of light is really a bad thing. Rose, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, recreation is actually one of the biggest economic drivers in each of the 4 counties that we just mentioned, so it is really essential. We also have Steve from Stewards of Sierra National Forest.
Thank you. My name is Steve Calgary. I'm also with the Stewards. I'm kind of their roads and trail guy. Retired from the Forest Service in engineering. A couple of things I wanted to say about UniteTheParks.org. I really encourage you to go to that site. Take a look at it, check out all the information they have, because if you're new to this and you go to that site, you look at it and it's very compelling. You know, you say, wow, this is a great project, I'm going to jump on board. The only problem is most of it is not accurate and most of it is not true. So, again, please go to the site, check it out, go to the videos. It's amazing how the videos pick out specific areas, you know, where she shows, for example, logging decks and, you know, how all these huge trees been cut, but they don't tell you why they were cut. You know, that they were part of firework after the fires, and recovery and things of that sort, or they will show you pictures of tractors, you know, tracks from tractors and heavy equipment. She doesn't explain why they're there, but she explains that this is what's causing our problems. She is our problem. We are not gonna, we don't want to attack her personally, but we need to attack the beliefs that she has. And so hopefully at the end of the day, or the evening, we'll be able to do that. A couple of things I wanted to just share with you. As I mentioned, I'm kind of a roads and trails guys and numbers and all this stuff. But on the Sierra National Forest, there is roughly 2,800 miles of road total. That includes paved roads, roads that are gravel, dirt roads. Of that, there is about 1,600 miles that are classified as level 2 roads, and these are the roads that most of us use to go out and do dispersed camping. And these are the roads that are going to be closed if this goes through. And so for folks that like to go out and do their dispersed camping and get out away from other folks, you're going to have to hike. And that affects, I don't know how many people here are under 50, but that affects a lot of us. So I would really encourage you to take a look at the proposals. Check out the executive summary that was written and submitted to the president in this August of 24, right? Yeah. And so also take a look, the other thing I thought was striking in their economic report. They indicated that this was going to be a boom to our area and bring in much needed funds.
I like Tom's numbers better than theirs.
Yes.
Yes, and out of all of this in the economic report, indicated that we would only have a loss of 65 jobs. Now, I can count probably 40 that I know right off the bat, but I just, it's kind of that old adage, garbage in, garbage out. These are the kinds of things that influence the people that sign it off. So, again, please get engaged, get involved, and check out the site, and I'm sure we'll push this through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. And Stewards of Sierra National Forest Forest, like Bobby mentioned, they do phenomenal work. Here's just a few slides kind of detailing what they do. But they're one of the key groups that does keep our rose control open, not just for motorized recreation, but for everybody. If you like to hunt and fish and camp, ride your mountain bike, ride your horse, you get there many times because of the stewards, as well as other groups that do road maintenance, but they do a ton of it. So thank you for all that you do, stewards. I also wanted to welcome Amy Brannick, who is here from California Off-Road Vehicle Association. Kingfisher, Amy.
It does my heart good to see all of you here. What we need actually is all of you multiplied by the other 18 forests that we have in California, because this problem is endemic to everywhere in California, no matter where you live. What it is that people have decided that they know better than you how you should live and what you should do. And there's something just very, very wrong in that assessment. And so all of you need to talk to your friends, you need to talk to your family. Corva and Cal4, we are there for you. We are at these meetings. Thank you to the gentleman who mentioned Chad Hansen, because I've gone up against Chad Hansen. I know the problem, literally. There are people like this, and this elitist attitude is what we fight against all the time. The other national monuments that are proposed, Satipla, I received an invitation for a special industry meeting less than 24 hours in Wairika or Weed, 4.5 hours from Sacramento. I didn't even have enough time to make the arrangements. And this is from the Forest Service, and I feel very special that I got this invitation. No remote participation at all. What this means is a listening session means they're going to tell you what they want to do, and they're going to do it regardless of what you say. This is not a model for government. This is not a model for managing our forests, and this is not a model that we need to support. Sierra National Forest is actually very lucky. Dean Gould and a lot of his staff, they are much better than on a lot of the other forests. Trust me when I say this. We've got Stanislaus just to the north, a lot worse. We're going through snowmobile issues now in the El Dorado, Plumas, and Tahoe National Forests. And there the people want to tell us that this miraculous thing of driving over snow, and then the snow melts at the end of the season and you don't know where everyone is, that actually harms the environment. And there's actually no proof that it harms the environment. But it's sort of, it's consistent with the message that they want to tell you. They want to convince you they are right, you're wrong, common sense doesn't apply. And the more we stay quiet and the less we fight, the more they get away with it. Right. So with Corva, I've been accused of having a big mouth a time or two. It's true. I will stand up for my people every day of the week, whenever it's needed. But we need all of you to do the same. We need all of you to support the petitions that the Blue Ribbon Coalition has. We need everyone to work together on this, just as Rose has done such a wonderful job of bringing everyone together. This is an amazing evening, and we need to do this much, much more to fight against the forces that really want to limit what you can do. So thank you for being here. I'm just going to say the Chuckwalla National Monument is one of the ones we've been working on for a year. In Mecacopia OHV area is a real OHV area that is very important to the people living in the desert. I spoke to one of the organizers from an organization in Colorado, and I said, why are you doing this? I mean, really, what is your motivation? And he said, well, we want to stop any alternative energy development in there. I said, but it's not designated for there anyway, so you don't. Well, we just don't want people to do what they're doing. So I said, so all of this is because you want to stop people from enjoying themselves on public land. And you didn't really answer me, but that was an acknowledgement. And we won't let it happen, Cal4 won't let it happen, Corva won't let it happen, and with you, we won't let it happen. Thank you.
I wish we had many, many more hours tonight, because there's so much more that I know Amy could share, the others up here tonight. So we'll have some follow-up information that we'll be sharing, and of course the calls to action, ways that you can get involved. I urge you to do so. But we have other people that I want to share, and so we can get to Q&A. So Mark Magnus for Clovis Independent Four-Wheel Drive Club.
Hello everybody, Mark Magnus. I am representing Clovis Independent Four-Wheelers. I've been past president and served with them for over a decade. I'm from Oklahoma and was not familiar with the forest until I got involved in four-wheeling and got up there. And when I heard about this national monument, I was offended. I was offended because last time I checked, the Sierra National Forest or the U.S. Forest Service Management is still beautiful. It's a wonderful place to go recreate. And when they say they're taking it away from them and give it to the National Park Service, you have to ask yourself, why? Well, with the stroke of a pen, the president can create this national monument and take away management to the U.S. Park Service. Well, with the stroke of a pen, the next president can change that. But if the Forest Service has lost all of its employees, how do you go back where it was? Okay? The other thing that really is offensive is everybody in this room is a conservationist, right? The people that live or recreate up there care about the forest. Most of us volunteer our time and our money to help people healthy. We work with the Forest Service, we don't fight them. And we try to keep the trail system healthy, whether it's for off-road vehicles, whether it's side-by-sides, Jeeps and whatnot, whether it's with the horseback community, whether it's with the cattle community. We want everybody to be able to enjoy the forest. What this act is doing, and what this proclamation would do, is take all that away. And it's just not the right decision for us, and it's not the right decision for our community. Economically, it's going to be devastating. So we've talked about logging industry, but it also would affect everybody who sells these side-by-sides, everybody who builds their Jeeps, every company that services them. They're going to be out of business. Not to mention the dispersed camping, because now you can't do that. You will be allowed to camp in developed campgrounds. If anybody's been around up in the forest here, there aren't that many developed campgrounds in the Sierra National Forest. So access is going to be very limited. And the other folks who will be impacted will be the people at Huntington who have these beautiful cabins on the Pittsburgh estates. It's Forest Service land, it will now be national monument. So the likelihood is that is going to go away, and those homes will come out. And these people who've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars will have nothing. So it's just not fair. If they're going to do this, they ought to go through Congress. We all ought to have a voice in this, and let it go through and be aired out. Let us all have a say. So that's it.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I just wanted to mention that just like Stewards, Clovis Independent Four-Wheelers and Corva and Calforva, in collaboration, these groups also maintain so many roads. So put up the toilets, put up the signs, all the hard work that's to be done is done through volunteers. But there's many other forms of recreation that are critical to the health of Sierra National Forest and conservation of species and preserving habitat in a way. So I'm really pleased to have Mike Costello from Howl for Wildlife here representing hunting and fishing.
Great. I'll probably get into advocacy too, if that's all right. Yeah, so hunting, hunters are conservationists, but we're downstream from all of these other uses. We require wildlife to be there, healthy ecosystems, healthy forests, successional habitat, which is basically when trees go away and they start growing back, you get new habitat, and ecology works for us. Howl for Wildlife was born through 2 years of attacks on bear hunting in California. The HSUS, United States Humane Society, tried to take away sustainable harvest of black bears in California. And Howl for Wildlife was born during that fight, and we realized that we, as hunters, we thought, we're always going to lose. We're always going to get our butts kicked by the animal rights extremists, and we're always going to lose because we always lose. And we realized that we don't have to always lose. Advocacy can work, and so we pulled together the community of hunters in California and started showing up. We started talking about our personal values, and we started telling people what our values were, and our values were not the slogan, which is like the wild-eyed, crazed, maniac slaughter, person that's just going out there drunk and shooting everything. Like, we're not that. And so we started to talk about our values, and it started to work, because no longer were the anti-hunters defining the dialogue. And I think what's critical here, now, Howl for Wildlife has been involved in campaigns in about 30 states. We've been involved in wins in Colorado, both in their Senate as well as this last year when mountain lion hunting was attempted to be banned through a proposition, ballot box biology. And we were pivotal to the conversation that was happening there, where we activated grassroots folks nationwide, but also in Colorado, to help win in that ballot box battle. What I'm telling you this is that you have agency. You have the ability to advocate for yourself and speak your value statements about why this forest is important to you, why it means jobs, why it means recreation, why OHV is good, why hunting is good. Everything about the multiple use mandate, what it means to you, because it means something different to every one of you. The multiple use mandate is something that's treasured in terms of our public lands, and every one of you can make a separate and unique statement about why it's important to you. And when your leaders, the electeds, start to hear that en masse, what your value statements are, then they start to listen to you. And so Biden may not care. He's on his way out. We're not sure if he's awake. But ultimately, politicians shift with the wind. And so whoever's in their ear the most, whoever's pushing their issue the most, whoever's most vocal, they will start to pay attention to you because they're politicians. And so what I want to say is that Howl for Wildlife, we're called Howl for Wildlife because when you howl as a pack, you can get something done and you can communicate. And so what I want to say to you is that you all have agency here, and if you're in your Facebook group for 10 minutes bitching about this, take 5 minutes and email your electeds.
Yes.
Not just your county supervisors. Email Newsom. Email state senators, assembly members, federal, email your Congress representatives, your representative, your senator. Get involved at that level. And contact your electeds is a real pain in the ass. It's hard. There's barriers to it. It's not easy to do. And so one thing that we do, and we'll work with Rose on putting this up on our Action Center, is we have an Action Center tool that's unique from most other Action Centers, where when you go on our Action Center and you put in your name and you want to send a letter, we route it directly to all of the electeds that are involved, even if they're not your district. You don't get filtered out because it's in this other district. And so if you want to talk to 5 assembly members from California that are on the fence on this, we set up so you can do that. And so I want you to know that you're going to get an email about this, probably from Rose, in the next week or so, that you can send a personalized, individualized, unique email, and we help you write it, basically. We help populate the language in there for you. You can also edit it yourself, but it will be different from every other email that's sent. So it doesn't just go into the folder of, oh, it's another one of those people. Every single email is different, it stands out, it's unique, it's yours, it comes from your address, and Howl's fingerprint's not on it. So that way it can't be discounted as some organized group that's just doing another campaign or something like that. But anyways, that's going to come from us through Rose. The most important thing is that your value statement has meaning when you share it with the electeds and the people that are making decisions on this. And I think, as you mentioned, even if Biden does swipe the pen on this, making sure that all of the politicians involved with state level and federal, make sure that they know that there's massive opposition to this, will help tilt the hand, or tilt the landscape a little bit when it comes to what happens on January 20th, or with the next conference. So that's all I have to say. So thank you for being here. This is phenomenal. I mean, this is amazing to see this.
tonight, and we'll also have follow-up that we can send you by email afterwards, one of which is the letter writing campaign that he mentioned. But Ireland from Congressman Fong's office wanted to make some quick follow-up comments to what Mike just shared. Go ahead.
I completely agree with what he said. I mean, working for it, we see your working for the government, we see your guys' emails, we see the calls, and we see your concerns. And the more that we get, the more we realize this is a big problem. This is something that our constituents are concerned about, and they want to be heard. When you email us, when you contact us constantly, our people in DC notice it, the people in the state notice it, and we get together, we have meetings, and we say, hey, we've had tens of people, if not hundreds of people, contact us about this, and we need to do something because our constituency matters, and this is what they're saying is the problem. So I highly recommend that as well. Even though it inundates me, I really do recommend it because it's important and we want to know what's going on. The problem is, a lot of the times, we don't know what you guys are concerned about unless you contact us, because we can't be on every Facebook page, we can't be on every social media post all the time seeing what you guys are saying. We need to know, and we need you guys to contact us. So it's extremely helpful. So
I second that too. I second that, yeah, 100%. You know who answers the phone in our office? It's me. So you can call me. Go on our website, you got our email there, our phone number. We hope to be really easy to contact. So
Two quick thoughts also. We've been using the word conservation. To me, conservation, and to most hunters in the wildlife management community, conservation is the wise use of resources so that future generations can use them. This proposal, to me, is not conservation. This is preservation. And preservation doesn't work. The human hand has been involved in ecosystems in North America for 20,000 years. There's not an ecosystem in North America that hasn't had human participation in it, including forage, plant life, wildlife, air, water, and soil. And so this is not conservation on my book, this is preservation. There is a group of people out there that think you can shake up the snow globe, walk away, and everything settles down nicely. And that's not actually true. That's not how the landscape works, that's not how ecology works. We see it in the wildlife space with non-management of predators. We have ecosystem crises developing right now in California. These fires are the result of ecosystem imbalance because humans stepped away from managing the forests. So don't get confused. And if your friend that you're talking to about this says, oh, it's all about conservation, stop. It's not conservation. You don't have to battle them, but just say, hey, look, these words are important. It's not conservation, it's preservation. And it's exclusion of your participation, which is modern. It's not ecologically or historically accurate to remove humans from the landscape. So don't let people get caught up in the very charismatic idea of doing these wonderful things, which are very modern, very new, very unproven, and actually very detrimental. So arm yourselves with the differences between what's really going to happen and what they're proposing. And finally, the other action tool that we have on How for Wildlife is a letter to the editor tool. Media reports on what they're told to. So when the proponents of this very charismatic issue go in and say, here's San Francisco Chronicle, this is a wonderful story. We want you to lead this, we want you to report on it this way. They're just going to do it because the story's been written for them. And they think that's what everybody's going to support. Just like politicians, at the end of the day, media, you are their constituent. And so our letter to the editor tool makes it so that you can put in any city in California, or pull up a dozen or so publications that are central to that within 50 miles or so. So you can put it in Los Angeles, you get all the LA newspapers, and you can write yourself a letter to the editor telling all those newspapers what you think about this issue. If you do that in mass, all the major news publications in California will realize there's a problem. There's a problem with this thing that's going on in Central California that's being proposed. And so you can get your voice amplified into the media of all the major newspapers of California, and they'll start to realize, oh, wait, what's going on here? Maybe there's a different side to this story. So again, your voice can work and your voice can matter if you put it into the right inboxes, and we're going to help you do that.
We haven't had time to go through what these impacts would be on bear and deer and mountain lion and the other species of animals that we enjoy the ability to hunt in could share. This is a great site, and thank you all for being patient. We're almost done to Q&A. Last but not least, we also have Curtis Easton from Yosemite Southgate Trails Cooperative representing the mountain bike community. So welcome, Curtis.
I'll be as brief as I can since we're running short on time. We're a little suspicious, more than a little suspicious of this range of light prospect. Partly because we don't trust what we're being promised with respect to human-powered access, but also because we recognize that we live in kind of a symbiosis with all of the other users. Yeah? And we can't do what we want to do in the forest if everybody else loses access to it. Yeah? So, we're just a small organization. We started in 2017 with a dozen people. Yeah, 5 from Oakhurst, North Fork, Cass Lake area, and 7 from Fresno. And we've grown to 250 unique subscribers. It costs $40 a year to join our organization, $60 for a family. If you include all of the family members, we have over 300 members that pay. They pay for the privilege of going out and working on the trails, clearing the roads, working in conjunction with the stewards and the other users who are doing these things. We dedicate usually about 2,000 hours per year, volunteer hours, all volunteer, just like all of the other volunteers. And we've cleared thousands of trees on these hiking trails that advocates of the range of light endeavor that they think that they would be using, but those trails would be filled with gigantic trees. They'd be bird nested with trees, yeah, if people weren't out there clearing them. So there'd be no access for anybody, yeah? And there's no way to get to those trails if you can't use the roads to get to them. Yeah? Sometimes we like to camp. We'll do dispersed camping on a spur. Well, they want to get rid of all the spurs. So, what will we do? What will we do when all of that's closed down? There will be no access for anybody. It will be so hard to get back there that essentially it will become a wilderness area. Yeah? I guess that's about all I have to say. I could say more, but we should open it up for questions.
There's so much more to say. And Yosemite Southgate Trails Cooperative also does some amazing work with trail maintenance. They basically manage the 007 riding area that's up south of Yosemite. And if you're into mountain biking riding, I know I'm not saying that right. If you enjoy that recreation, you have to go there. It's one of the best areas to ride a mountain bike in California, and that's thanks to their hard work. And so motorized recreation collaborates with mountain biking, with hunting, with people who paraglide, with horseback riders who take pack trips into the High Sierra, with fishermen. All of these recreationists and More Than Night Convention work together, and also with out-of-state and national organizations like Blue Ribbon, to keep our public access open to our public lands. So I'm going to filter through some slides. Here's some more great work done by Yosemite Southgate. But I'm going to filter through some slides because we have touched on a lot of this stuff, and we want to get to Q&A. Real quickly, I want to note there's copies. I'll send copies of these slides to everybody, but Congressman McClintock also issued a very powerful statement of his opposition, and his district does cover the majority of what is contained within the range of light. So this is a really important one to pay attention to. Congressman McClintock and Congressman Vaughn work very closely with the House Natural Resources Committee, which our groups actually work very closely with as well, to ensure that this kind of legislation doesn't go through Congress, that the voice of the people is heard and brought into consideration when these kinds of proposals come up. So many thanks to Congressman McClintock and Congressman Vaughn for their involvement. We also have a message which we can send out as a link from the boards of supervisors for Fresno and Tulare County. They weren't able to be here for the whole meeting tonight. I know they've had different folks pop in. We have Brett from Fresno County, and Nathan has been here, but he's doing double duty in some meetings tonight. And so anyhow, this is a very important message that we'll make sure we get to you as well. And so solutions, what can you do to help? You will be sending out a call campaign. As you heard from Assemblyman Tanipa and Congressman Fong's offices, the calls matter. And so we have a list of talking points that make it really easy to succinctly say the things that are important to you and why you oppose it, to pick up the phone and make a call, either talk with a staff member who answers, thank you to those who answer, or leave a message so that when they come in the morning, they're bombarded with, maybe 75 messages they get to go through, hearing about your voice and your thoughts on something. So you may not be able to see it from the audience, but there's actually the names and numbers of people to call. These are all politicians who have publicly supported the range of light. And so we've had a kind of a light momentum in that call campaign, but we'll be getting this out to everybody so you can join in the calls too. I know it makes a difference because I know I've been calling Jim Costa's office quite a bit, and when I do, his staff says, oh yes, we've been hearing from the people. And so we have to keep calling because those calls do sway momentum. We also have a local petition, and I'm not sure, is Derek here tonight? Derek, do you want to come down just real quick and say anything about this? Derek is an awesome member of our community who, of his own volition, started a petition to oppose the range of light when he also heard about it from the webinar that was hosted by Unite the Parks a few weeks ago, and it's gained some great traction.
Hey everybody, most of you guys have seen me on Facebook posting different posts on this range of light. I did start the petition. It was mainly the work of everybody here in the room and I believe over 12,000 other people that have signed it. Pretty much my history with the Sierra National Forest. We live in Bass Lake, about 3 miles from Bass Lake. And I do own a business and I've serviced over 2,000 people in the Sierra National Forest. So me personally, I couldn't just sit there and not do nothing, and this is one of the things that I did do. And it was all motivation from you guys, getting to know people, and just not being able to sit there and just take this and not do anything about it. So that was all from you guys. One thing I will say is there's a lot of people that, we're sitting good. We don't have to worry about this. Joe Biden's not going to sign it. Keep fighting. Don't pay attention too much to that. Don't back down. As soon as a deer turns around, that's when he gets shot. So keep fighting. Don't back down. One of the big things we need to work on doing after this kind of settles down, hopefully this don't get signed. So we need to figure out how to protect the Sierra National Forest so this doesn't happen again. And hopefully we can all figure out that in the near future. I've talked to a few people about that. And there's been a few things on the internet I've read too, and hopefully we can get that to where the Sierra National Forest stays ours. And we can do some improvements along the way as well too. So I appreciate every one of you guys, and you guys should all give yourselves a round of a hand because we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for everybody here. Just keep fighting, keep circulating the petition. I know we did hit 10,000 signatures. The more people that are opposed to it, the better off we are. So keep circulating it. And I appreciate all the hard work from everybody and everybody that supported me through different things that I'm trying to do for the forest, as well as the people that live in the forest and use the forest. Not just from here. We've got people from LA, Bakersfield, San Francisco, San Diego. I know a lot of them that have cabins up here and enjoy just coming here and getting away from the city life and just being able to relax and press the reset button. So thanks, and y'all have a good night.
So this QR code takes you to the petition. It's exceeded 12,000 signatures. Let's hit 20. I think we can absolutely do it. So if you haven't signed already, please sign it and send it to everybody you know. We also have Blue Ribbon Coalition circulating petitions for multiple monuments. As Ben mentioned, they're fighting, I'm not going to list them all, but if you go to knolane.gov, actually, Ben, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. Is this working soon? Okay. looking on a minute ago. So we do have some ducks out there. I know we've got some Jeepers in the crowd, and I know that most Jeepers in this crowd are too cool to do the duck thing. But we need to get other people that don't know about this. And so these are out there on the tables. You can talk to them, but it's no lame duck land grab. Because Joe Biden is a lame duck president right now. He lost the election, his party lost the election. If he does this, it will be against the will of the American people who spoke pretty clearly in November. And so this page will take you to our page that has 9 separate monument proposals that we can oppose. That's the phase we're in right now. If they designate, I was talking to the reporter from the LA Times that wrote a big story about these monuments, and I said, I don't think they should do it, but this new administration and this new Congress coming in are going to have a lot of things commanding their attention. There were a lot of promises made on that campaign, and doing land management policy wasn't a highlighted issue of the 2024 election. If Biden goes and designates a New Jersey-sized collection of national monuments on his way out the door in December as a lame duck president, this will become one of the top issues that will get the attention of the incoming administration, which means we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to permanently reform the Antiquities Act. And there are bills to do that. I do believe, so Senator Mike Lee will be the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and I've worked with him for a long time. He has always had bills that will, there's one that would require congressional approval of any national monuments to be designated. There are ones that would exempt certain states. Like right now, you can't make national monuments in Alaska and Wyoming because they got exempted. But that's going to require getting that attention. Like they're going to need to hear from you, and that's why these petitions are important. Like right now, we want you to communicate to the members of Congress if you oppose this, but there's going to be 2 or 3 more rounds of this, because then the other thing they can do is, in the first 100 days, you'll see that a lot of talk about what's called the budget reconciliation process, which is the one vote in Congress where they don't need 60 votes in the Senate to pass a budget. They can defund all these monuments through that process, and so they'll never actually go into effect. But not if they don't, there will be 1,000 other things trying to get into that budget reconciliation bill, and if we're not pushing for it, as a collective, unified national voice of opposition to these, then it's going to be hard to get on that list. And so that's why we're doing this now. If Biden designates these, it'll be extremely frustrating, but we need to use that as a moment to galvanize this into a movement that can take this into the next 4 months to make sure things get permanently fixed.
Thank you. So please, go to No Lame Duck Land Grabs, submit all of the petitions for every single monument that's listed there. This builds our library of opposition that we can take into court for litigation, that we can take to Congress when we're asking them to defund appropriations, that we can take to the White House to say you need to rescind this designation. All those actions require the volume of our voices. So please go submit all of them, even if they're for monuments that aren't your backyard. Maybe you don't claim it, but maybe you don't claim it yet. Somebody else does. And so you're signing it and you're spreading the word and getting information out there is absolutely crucial. And it takes just a few minutes, and it's free for you to do. So we invite you to join us in doing so. Please also, if you didn't register online, make sure that you sign up on the sign-in sheet, which is on the Cal 4-wheel table right out front. Include your email address, and that way we can continue to send you updates on what happens with these decisions and other resources and actions that you can utilize. Okay, we're at Q&A. We have a mic here in the center, and first up we have Brett Rush from Fresno County Supervisor Nathan Maxig's office.
Thank you, Rose. Again, my name is Brett Rush. I work with Fresno County Supervisor Nathan Maxig. Appreciate the handling all the information provided. But if you're just overwhelmed with email address and who I contact our office, 605,000. All you gotta do, and we'll direct you to the legislator who you should be calling or writing letters to or email. So 605,000 is the easy way to take all this information and call us. We can help you. That's it. No question.
So feel free to line up if you have questions. questions for anybody here on our panel? Go ahead.
Rose, thank you for this panel. It was really well put on. I'm not here where I don't have a question. I actually have a statement. I have to make an official statement. My boss has told me to. My name is David Rivas. I'm the Senior Field Rep and Policy Director for the NorCal Carpenters Union. We are here to stand in support of you guys to oppose this. I represent 38,000 members in Northern California and the hundreds that live within this range of light monument. Monuments kill jobs. There are construction jobs out there that are overlooked, that tend to see in the dams, the rebuilds, the roads, the bridges. That is our work. We're here to stand and to say, those who are online, who are watching, that we will spend time, money, and effort to support defeating this any way we can, because we have to protect those jobs, all those tax-paying Americans that live up there and work and pay and live every day depending on those jobs. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Great information. It's really super information. What we're seeing here is a movement by people in our country that want to promote Agenda 21. This is part of it. Okay? We have to stop it. Years ago, I logged up in that country. I took logs to your sawmill. After they closed down Albury and North Fork, I was forced to. We had to go south of it, and we went to yours. But half of my workforce was local Mono Indians. And you said earlier that they were in the mountains and stuff for a couple hundred years. They were there for thousands of years. Some of the older ones, I'm talking about in their 70s and 80s, told me stories about when they were kids and their parents took them to the forest in early spring. They spent all spring and all summer. In the fall, when they came out, their dads set the forest on fire behind them to burn the underbrush. And that was our forest management for years and years and years and years. We really don't know how long, but a tremendous amount of time. Okay. We were chased out of the forest by the government. One of the first ones was a spotted owl. Well, I used to go back to check out closed landings, and I'd look up in the trees and there'd be spotted owl nests now. They weren't there before, because we couldn't log there if they were. But they were taking advantage of us opening up areas for them to hunt for their prey. And that's what the Indians did also. Made it easier for them to come back and hunt for their prey that they ate and stuff like that on it. We logged the bug-infested trees. And 1 year on the North Fork side, I took out 2.5 million trees, board feet of trees. They ran us out. So we lost all of that forest management. If you think Paradise was sad, what's happening now is going to be even worse. What we saw with the creek fire is from improper forest management. And that's a sign of what's going to happen here in the future. So we need to stop this and force those people that didn't vote for Trump to find a new life, that we have a life here, and we want to keep our people in the right place.
My name's Roy Hooper. I grew up here in Clovis. I've been stomping around Camp Sierra since I was in diapers. I'm on the board, the site holders board there. Shameless plug, if you have a church that needs a place to go, we are 60 acres of green forest in Big Creek Canyon. It's still there if you need a place to do group meetings. My question relates to people like myself who are in holders on Forest Service land. We are leaseholders for our family cabins. That's one thing maybe the Congress people can get to their congressman and give us some information about that. Also, I'm a mining claim holder with a couple other partners, and we're going to be swallowed up by that of Kirkhoff Reservoir also. So, as well as all you other people, I'm an avid fisherman. I don't four-wheel except in my truck. I can't get to a lot of the high country places, but I love going up to White Bark Summit and looking out over the range of light in the high Sierras of all the places I used to backpack when I was a teenager. Cover that whole place from a lot of the John Muir Trail. So to get to places where you don't want to see people, you have to go a little bit farther and get up into the wilderness areas instead of creating wilderness areas where it's easy to get to. They're hard to get to for a reason, and we go there to get away from people.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple of questions came up for me when you were speaking about the other monuments that are proposed in California. It seems very coordinated, but is it coordinated? I mean, my thought when I first came across Deanna Landwolf's proposal like 8 years ago when it first came on my radar was, who does this woman think she is, and why can she speak for us? But is it a more coordinated effort with all these other monuments? Is she just a front person presenting this? And are there other front persons where it's being presented as something not the bigger picture? Because it seems to be very coordinated with all of their agendas. Is there one organization behind them? Is there all just a group of environmentalists? Is there an answer to that yet?
There is an answer, yeah, and I'll share some information. Others may have some responses, but one of the big agendas behind all of this is Agenda 2030. Yep. Which Biden actually signed, codified it into law through the America the Beautiful Act, which was one of the first executive orders that he issued. It's an executive order he issued, so he didn't codify it, that's right. But he had signed an executive order during his first few days in presidency, and that funded and created the structure for conservation of 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030. And monuments are one of the big strategic puzzle pieces to achieve that 30% conservation goal. So when you're looking at, like we were showing those blocks of land, like here with the wilderness, there's a purpose for that connectivity. When you're looking at Chuckwalla and Quishan and how it would come up from Mexico and connect with Joshua Tree National Park, and then that goes up further, it connects to Abiquaming and the Nevada border. All that connectivity is intentional to create these high concentrations of highly conserved land, which, like Mike said, is actually preserved land, not conserved. There's more to it. It's more than we can get into tonight, and I have some resources that we'll include in our follow-up that goes into a little bit more detail about that. But yes, there is. I don't know if Unite the Parks is aware of that intentionally, if they're knowingly part of that strategy, but there's a lot of different factions of groups that come together and collectively achieve this goal, and that's what's going on. Does anybody else want to make some comments about that?
Real quick, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Some of them are coordinated and some of them are less coordinated. I wouldn't say they're not in connection or in communication with each other. Range of light is sorry, but it's the demented nightmare of one woman. And she came up with that kind of on her own. It didn't mean that they're going back into what John Muir intended and all of that. But the other ones, the other smaller ones like Satitla, Chuckwalla, Quaitsan, as Rose said, those are connected, and it is a concerted effort. And I apologize for not remembering the group out of Colorado that is pushing a lot of these monuments, but I will get the information to Rose when I get back to my computer. And they are specifically pushing in different states for as many national monuments as they can get. And I met this gentleman at the 30 by 30 partnership meeting in Sacramento, where I live and where a lot of these meetings take place, and he was very proud of it. So that's something to be very, very worried about.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. My other question that came up is, I went through a period of time where I was disabled and I could not walk for a year, pretty much. I was on crutches and had crutches in a wheelchair for about 6 months. Where is Americans with Disability Act on this? I mean, you are going to extremely limit people's access to the forest.
Amy, could you please sit down?
I have been in a wheelchair 3 times, counting. Lucky that I'm not right now, but due to great surgeons. I am, though, considered fully disabled. There is a moral and ethical obligation by all federal agencies, but the saying that they have as far as non-developed areas, so we're talking about not campsites, not anywhere where there are restrooms, but non-developed areas, is that you can't put handrails in the forest. We have pursued it, though, through Corva. We did file a lawsuit against the Clovis National Forest Tribal Management Plan, and I believe we started in 2016 with Pacific Legal Foundation. And Butte County and Clovis County joined us in that lawsuit, and part of it was about disabled access. And we did not prevail, but we did get a lot more attention from the Forest Service after that. So this is an issue that I push constantly because it really does affect me. I don't know, like you, I don't know when my legs will go out again. It's very possible. So I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity. Going into the forest helped heal me. I had a picture of the Ducey Air Show Trail actually in my bedroom one of those times I was in a wheelchair, and I'd look at it and I'd go, okay, I'm going to get there again. And that helped me heal, literally, and because it's my favorite trail. Everybody deserves the right, especially if you're disabled, to have the healing properties of going out into public land. So right now, from all the different attorneys that I've spoken to, and we've spoken to quite a few, there's just no precedent for disabled access in non-developed areas, but it doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. Thank you.
And I want to add one thing to that. So we ran into the same problem with Blue Ribbon Coalition, where we had sued on the Black Sands Beach BLM plan, and same thing. It was about disability access, and we didn't win in court. And so I took that issue back to DC and briefed Senator Lee's office on it. And after learning about that process and the deficiencies that exist in the law around that issue, in August of this year, he introduced the Outdoor Americans with Disabilities Act. And this would require our federal land management agencies to analyze the impacts of their plans on disability access and keep a certain level of road density on our public lands, or they would be discriminatory. And so this would fix it and would give us cause of action that actually requires them to keep these plans.
Thank you.
First of all, my name is Lloyd. I'm a retired CAL FIRE employee, and so I worked with the government and saw how they were working with us or against us. As far as people that own the property up in the Sierra Nevadas, like ranches, meadows, houses, the Yosemite was taken over by Teddy Roosevelt, made that into a park. There was already existing cabins, houses, ranches, and meadows existing, and somehow fire went through there, and it just so happens the cabins that were in there burned. And guess what? The government said, we're not going to take that land, but we're not going to give you a permit to rebuild your cabins and your fences and your properties. So if there's nothing to land on, you just have a camp trailer. And those people use the camp trailers to do that. Thank you. And now they want to take our camp trailers away from us and not let us go up there and even stay in a camp trailer. The other thing I was involved with was the creek fire. And I'm not going to say what started it, but I think it was the cops. And so that just got quieted down real quick in the government, looking into the fire danger. And I actually pulled up the green sheet, and that means that's what happens. You know, the people put their paperwork down, and it looked like one of our government documents where they took the felt pen. You know, and this was shit. This is what the they give to the people. It looked like a paper just blacked out. And no names, just numbers. People that were investigated were numbers, there were only 2, and they just said it was too dangerous to go down there. The other thing I was going to say is I got caught up in that, and I didn't know it was deer season in the camps. The Sierra Nevadas were shut. We're going up to Wishon, Courtright, Chevrolet, and they had a big sign that said, "Do not enter," because there might be another fire, and we ain't going to be able to put it out. And so I went ahead and went in there, and a couple hours later, here come the U.S. Ranger cop, and I got a ticket. And the ticket was $100 for trespassing, and the thing that really got me, it cost me $25 more to process my check. In other words, to give them my fine. You know, they don't even do their own processing of the payment. And so I started writing letters, because they were closing this out. And I actually brought up some documents from the, you want to talk about old school. I brought up some documents that were 1860s, that if you think we got it bad, the government rounded up all the Indians and put them in a little spot called a reservation. And those are all up and down the coast and the Sierra Nevadas. And I found these documents that said in 1860, the U.S. government said, we're going to put you in this little postage stamp, but you'll still be able to go. And this is where I'm going with the story. You'll still be able to go up and hunt, fish, gather, whatever you need, but you still live in this postage stamp, but we allow access. Now there's the word right there that we need to jump on. And I've actually sent that to the Sacramento Indian Affairs, the Washington, D.C. Indian Affairs, and about 2 days later, they reopened the forest for us for deer season that year. I'm not trying to get a pat on the back, but after that, they kind of came to my house and gave me a lot of shit. So if there's any G-men in here, my name is John Smith, and I want to thank you all.
Mahu, hello, my name is Matthew Munoz. I'm the Tribal Council Secretary for Big Sandy Rancheria. And yeah, we have a couple of concerns with this project. First of all, my tribe, first major concern is this Deanna Wolf. She never formally addressed us with a request for consultation, and as a federally recognized tribe, that's the law. So that's already liberal. That's number one. I believe she reached out to my chair this week, and their deadline's the 20th. So, I mean, usually it's months in advance. You request a meeting with the tribe will get back to you, but they're trying to rush this process just like everything else. So that's the number one concern, that there was no federally request for any kind of consultation with our tribe, and we are located, if you don't know, Big Sandy Rancheria, right in Aubrey, California. That's right on the dog map right there. So yeah, we were never had a request for a consultation, and so that's one of my tribe's concerns. And we just find it very disrespectful. I mean, being the first people of the nation did not have any consultation whatsoever. So that was a huge major concern with us, and like I said, it's already, violating the federal law. So secondly, we are original stewards of the land, so everything the whole panel said, we agree. We know we've been here for thousands of years. We know the stewardship of how to actually properly manage the land, properly go about logging, go about hunting. I mean, we're all for that as well. Completing our watersheds, not making any more dams, because you can't fill a dam if you don't have the watersheds to fill it with, right? So doing cultural burns, bringing that back, and we are working with the United States Forest Service right now on having agreements with those agencies, and those are years and years and years of working with the federal agency. And for this other agency just to come in out of the blue, what's that mean for all those years of working? What do those mean for those MOUs, those agreements that we have with the Forest Service now? And it's not easy working with another, federal agency, working with a tribe and another federal agency, which is us. It's not easy having those agreements and going through all those years of work, and having my ancestors and everyone before me on their council go through those trials and tribulations to come to this point of view where we're actually working with the Forest Service, and we're working through the forest now, and then have that all taken away and start from ground zero. So that was another major concern. And then, so just dealing with all that, all these unknowns of the transparency of the transition between the agencies, you know, playing the devil's advocate, if they do switch over, we can't support that. So I stand here opposing the Range of Light Monument on behalf of Big Sandy Rancheria.
I'd like to connect with you before we leave tonight, so let's make sure that we connect if you don't mind.
Well, Matt said most of what I was going to say. Good evening. My name is Fred Bean, North Fork Rancheria Tribal Chairman. I want to say thank you to Rose, and thank you to all the panel. I don't really have any questions. I just have some comments also. So our people have been up in those mountains for thousands of years, hunting, gathering, spiritual, just living their lives. They cultivated, these mountains. Our tribe has written a letter to President Biden and also to President-elect Trump. We're sending it off. We've had meetings locally with some of the other tribes. Many of the tribes are opposing. North Fork Rancheria is absolutely opposing. Like I said, I was raised in those mountains, fishing, hunting, riding dirt bikes, rock climbing, climbing trees, water skiing, snow skiing. I want to see my kids, my grandkids, all do the same. Recreation is there. It should always be there. I thought the analogy of the garden was amazing. That was perfect. Growing up, my grandmother had a huge garden that we had to work every day, all day, but we got fruits of the garden. And I say that's a good analogy because that's just like that forest, right? It has to be cultivated. And when you leave the garden, it's going to grow a lot of weeds. You got to pull the weeds, but you also got to pick the fruit, right? And so those mountains, they have to be logged. They have to be cultivated. It's just part of the whole natural evolution of everything up there. It's just the way it is. And so I just wanted to touch to the fires, right? I was a victim of the fire. I lost my place. The Creek Fire is a huge footprint. Devastation like we haven't seen before, right? Well, this is going to bring devastation to our economies, to our public lives, to the businesses. Right away, when we start talking about these forest things, right away people start thinking logging. But this is so far-reaching. This is recreational. This is not just the sporting goods. This is the grocery stores, the hardware stores. This is everything. Everybody that lives up there, they share their lives. I worked for Southern Cal Edison on the hydroelectric project. So it even affects all of that, right? Every business up in those mountains, every house, every community. So it's something that we all have to join together. I'm glad to see everybody here tonight because it was mentioned earlier, this is how we get stuff done. We join together, we all have a common goal, and I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here tonight for joining together in a common goal and doing this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Troy Patton. I'm Vice President of Public Lands for Backcountry Horsemen of California. I don't have a question, I just wanted to bring forth a little information. Like the Stewards of the Sierra, Backcountry Horsemen is an all-volunteer service group that does trail work throughout the state of California. We work with the Forest Service, BLM, and the Park Service. We do it a little different than most of you. We pack our gear in on pack mules. If we need bridge girders, there's a way of doing that on pack mules. But the message I wanted to send tonight is we are totally against this monument. Something that's been mentioned many times by all of you, and I thought y'all did a fantastic job, is when they push a monument, there's a reason behind it. There's something that they want to stop. It's either logging, as when getting past the sequoias, and you were very knowledgeable on that, which you did. You brought it up on the other end down here. That was their main message when they went to Utah. They were after mining, cattle grazing, and many other things. The mining part always tickles me because all these people calling themselves environmentalists, they want to go green, but where are they going to get these elements for these solar panels, for these wind turbines, and things like this? They all come out of the ground. The lithium mine that you mentioned down below the Choctaw area is going to be their next target. We have drafted a letter. I got to look this up because I don't live here. We drafted a letter from Backcountry Horse and the President that is going to be hand carried and delivered to Joe Biden by David Aladero. You folks might know he's congressman here in your area. And if it's been delivered yet, I don't know, but that was the part that we took on this. And we will continue to fight this monument. My biggest complaint about it is the way they did it. They're taking advantage of the Antiquities Act, which, as you all stated, is to protect an area. It's to be as small as possible. So I was told that the growth of the sequoias was right at 27,000 acres with a buffer zone, small buffer. So why did Bill Clinton need 325,000 acres? You mentioned the Escalon and the Bears years. While Obama was flying over it, somebody in his party said, well, you need to make it bigger, so he did. All with a stroke of a pen. And it was something that Donald Trump contested that Joe Biden took away again, and I hope he follows through with that. And by the way, I want to trade cards with you, several of you up there tonight. But thank you for your time.
And just really quick, I want to mention we have this auditorium at our disposal until 9 p.m. So if you do have a question or something you want to share, we don't want to miss anybody. But now will be the time. We'll have to wrap up in about 19 minutes.
I'll be quick then. I'm Amber Friend. I live in Prater, which is kind of the very edge of this. But I have 3 kids that are Boy Scouts. So we go camping out there a lot. I know lots of farmers and ranchers. I know a lot of the ranchers that run cattle up there. I live off of 168. We had a lot of accidents, and I'm not sure if any of that has been taken into consideration when this is being, they're saying 2.7 million people through there. 168 cannot handle that. A lot more people will die. And I'm not saying this might target. We have people dying all the time on 168. So if they're trying to shove that many people up, and we don't have hotels that can accommodate that. We do not have the infrastructure, we don't have the roads, the hotels, the places to eat. Enough parking for that many people. So people would be driving up 168, 41, all these roads that are more of what we're using for us in our backyard that are now going to have a lot more people that are going up and then have to turn around and come back down in one day because there's no place for them to stay. So that's going to make commutes. If you're commuting up and you work at China Peak, your commute is going to be way worse. Or for those of us that live in the foothills that have to come down here to work, again, way worse. I don't know if any of that has been taken into consideration. Like I said, there's already a lot of accidents and a lot of deaths that are occurring on these roads. They're not designed to have that much traffic. It's really going to hurt the outlying communities and here. Even if you live in the city, it's going to impact you as well. Not to mention the camping and the impact it's going to have on the generations to come. Because if we can't get our Girl Scouts, which that's what they do, is go out and they help. They clear some of those paths and trails, they camp, and they learn how to to conserve with use. And if we take that away from them, again, we're one generation from losing it. So we need to fight for it.
Hello, my name is Sheriff Bigelow, and I represent Camp Redwood Improvement Association. And we have had our camp since 1918. In the 50s, we got special use permits. We hold water permits. And I'd like to know, in the national monument, what happens to water permits? And does the irrigation district know that their permits could be in risk?
I can answer that. Typically, a monument has not affected water rights because those are administered by state policies and authorities in California. But what we saw in Bears Ears, in their latest monument management plan, they declared an area of environmental critical concern of the whole 1.3 million acres of Bears Ears for the aquifer underneath the monument and the groundwater. So they use the Antiquities Act as a tool to give the BLM jurisdiction for really like the first time ever over underground water resources, which have typically been state level policy that manages all of that, which is just shocking that they did that. But so they really see no limits to this. I was in the courtroom. They think it covers every inch and every drop of water, and there is no defining limit of the Antiquities Act. Smallest area compatible means planet Earth and probably the moon.
That's a huge amount of water that goes down into the valley. It goes from Melder Creek to Fresno River down to the valley for farmers. So that might be something you want to bring up there. The other thing is, since we've had our camp for over 100 years, we've been working with the Forest Service to preserve it as a national, not a national monument, but as a historical spot. And so for someone else to come and say that they want to take that away from us, when we've been working for over 100 years for maintaining this, we pay a fee to the Forest Service, we pay Madera County taxes. I mean, like, my great-grandfather spent his life there, my grandma spent her life there, my mom spent her life there, I have spent my life there, and my children have spent their life there. That's historical. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank all the panelists for being here. I hope I have an opportunity to interview every one of you on my podcast. I'm here representing Constitutionalists for California. My name is Eric Rollins. I see this problem as part of a larger problem. Government overreach is happening continually. Because it's continually happening, one of the solutions, though, is to learn about the Constitution, know our rights, and elect people that want small government. How many people in this audience regularly attend your city council meeting or your board of supervisors meeting? I know I see. I think the board of supervisors said that's where my podcast is, but I've been over 25 times in the last 2 years. My point is, here we're blessed. We live in the greatest country in the world. That's right. But we don't seem to understand that we still have a civic responsibility. And that civic responsibility requires us to be part of the solution. Government should not be making all the decisions for us. Government should be listening to us, getting our input, because this is a nation founded with the idea of by, for, and of the people. Get involved, folks. We need to make a difference.
A little taller. I want to thank the panel for everything that you gave us some information-wise. But, you know, my name is Mark Reed. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up fishing, hunting, riding horses, four-wheel driving, doing all the fun things that you can think of in our public lands. I raised my children to do the same thing. I have 11 grandchildren, believe it or not, 10 of them are granddaughters, and they still hunt, they ride, they shoot, they do everything that I do. So something that's not being touched, we're talking all the financial aspects of it, but the foundation of this nation is our families. Healthy forests grow healthy families. Healthy families grow healthy communities. Healthy communities maintain healthy forests. Politicians are the termites in our forests. Every single politician, because every single one of them will position themselves for a political gain. I'm against national forest monument because my constituents live here. But this has been going on for 8 years now. This Miss Wolf lady has been pushing this for a long time. Nathan Natzig has been fighting this for quite a long time. He's been at the forefront. Tim Long has been in the forefront for a long time. It's not just financial. This is our community. This is our families. This is our children. This is our next generations. And the proof of that, from your perspective looking out here, there was a lot of snow-capped, two-legged animals out here. And the snow-capped individuals that have raised their families, they know what they're losing. It's not just the forest. It's the foundation of this nation. Simple, simple, simple. Fight for the foundation of this nation, which is our families. Thank you.
Name's Ed Buck, I'm from Clovis, California. That gentleman, I want to segue right into that. First off, thank you to all the panel. Unbelievable. It's Brent or Brent? Ben. I was close. So what he just said, our families, and you're the law guy. You're the one that has access there. I was in yoga last night, and I've been thinking about this for the last 3 months when I saw this lady on Mag 6 Facebook page. I've raised my kids up at Mono Hot Springs, Edison Lake. Since they were in diapers, I would take them up there. Now my grandkids. Everything this gentleman just said. I hunt, I fish, I hike, I four-wheel drive. This is in our bones. This is in our blood. Everyone in this room. Everyone in this room. This is our culture. So with that, let's all identify, so we could use that word identify in a lawsuit. They can't take away our identity. And everyone knows where I'm going with this. How we identify is with those mountains. So let's have an identity lawsuit. They can't take that away from us. That's our identity. And with that said, thank you everyone for coming.
My name is Ken Bowman. I appreciate your time that you've given us. I appreciate all the testimonies, all the comments, heartfelt, important. But it boils down to what can we do? And the answer is we've got to start writing letters and making phone calls. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff, but I'm going to. I see this How organization, they've got stuff there. We need to get off our butts and start being active. Who's going to decide our future, us or them? We have a chance to put input into it. These meetings are great. They reveal a lot of options and stuff like that. If you just go home and turn on the TV, you've wasted your time. Go home, get on the website, write a letter, make a phone call. I have heard my entire life how just a few letters or phone calls affect politicians. And I think that's true. I know a few politicians. I've interviewed Bob McCauley with the grand jury last year. I know Jim Patterson. My wife knows his wife. But you know what? Unless we convey, they can't read our minds. So unless we convey to them what we want done with our country and our policies, they don't know. So they're taking whatever they get. Get off your bums, get up and write some in letters, sign some petitions, make some phone calls.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Gotto. I'm president of the State Homeowners Association. I just want to say we're 400 strong. We have a letter ready that we send out to our members that they can forward to President Biden. They can craft it if they want to change it, and it does come with rules and practices. My question, though, our concern is we do have property owners that either lease their land in the forest or they own or they have businesses. I've spoken to Deanna, and of course she reassures us that there will be no change in that. I was just wondering, what your experience with monuments and what you think that would mean for our people.
For the private property inholders?
For private property residents, and there's also residents that lease their land for the Forest Service, and we have businesses
Those were
that are
addressed in the
on.
legislation that went in 21.
Yeah.
Use that as a roadmap.
But she says that there would be no change, but
They'll say
I'm dubious.
but that's not how it works. Over time, the government doesn't want inholders. It complicates the management. And so they will try to buy them out for nothing. And if that doesn't work, they will do what's called a regulatory taking, where they will just make it so difficult to be there. I mean, my policy director had a cabin where Bears Ears is now, and the Forest Service literally blew it up with explosives. So they do not want inholders in the monument. It complicates the management. It's not part of the purpose of it. And if you want to find the most egregious examples of the U.S. government abusing private property owners and their Fifth Amendment constitutional rights, look at the history of the National Park Service and the national monuments. They are in for a brutal future if this gets designated. They should be documenting everything, their property values and everything, because they need to keep that intact so they can establish legal standing.
Thank you very much.
The United Parks website has a fact sheet about private landowners and leases and what the impact would be. And of course, their fact sheet says that there will be no impact, that you'll continue to own and use your land or lease and use your land in the same way that you do today. However, there is also information, if you read further, that states that the only entity that could buy your land is the government. And so what happens is that you can't sell your land unless you sell to the government. You're locked into it for as many generations are living and unwilling to sell. Or if your property happens to be destroyed, then as the gentleman mentioned earlier, they often take action where they will not allow you to be permitted to rebuild. And so you're ousted that way. And it's happened time and time again. So whatever promises they make are usually not what you can guarantee what will happen. So like he said, document your land value now, have that ready to go if this did get designated to use for litigation.
Thank you. Pass that forward.
I just wanted to make one statement. I'm from Huntington Lake. Thank you, panel. Excellent job. There are 400 permitted cabins in the Huntington Lake area by the Forest Service. So this is probably unique to any other monument area too. 400 permitted cabins by the Forest Service. So that's just a big statement. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. It is an unusual, well, it is a unique piece about this range of light. We do have a lot of private inholdings, but like what Bennett shared with Chuck Wallet, there's a lot of inholdings in that monument as well. So it is something that needs to be addressed. Thank you though to our panel for sharing your time, your expertise. This has been so richly informative and we barely brushed the surface. So we'll have lots of follow-up for you. Thank you for all your time this evening and take care.
Thank you, Rose.
Do you mind if I hear you grumble? I thought they'd be okay. Yeah, here. That'll help. Cool. And then what's your problem? You can upload it tonight?
Oh, it's live right now.
Oh, is it?
It's live, so yeah, it's already on.
That makes it easy, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll have more updates on this. We will have future live streams from different town halls. Want to say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all your support, and we'll see you soon.